Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN WhatIf 2.0, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Had a Zero on His Neck? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. It was a seemingly normal day when Midoriya Izuku's life got flipped upside down. The sky was clear and the sun shined brightly from above. He and his mom were buying school supplies. The tiny 8-year-old could tell something was wrong with his mom today. He didn't worry. It was his mom. If anything happened, she'd protect him. He should have worried. Izuku entered the mall with a huge smile on his face. He dragged his mom around from store to store, asking to buy something here and there. "Izuku, honey," his mom said as she looked behind her, "remember what we're here for?" He does. The new school year was coming up soon and he needed supplies. He'd probably need to get a little more if his stuff kept getting destroyed. His smile fell a little when he thought about it. Another year with Kaken and his friends. Another year of being Deku. "Yeah," Izuku replied, a smile spreading across his face again. "Let's go." The pair walked around the mall a bit more to find the stationery store. When they passed the food court, Inko gripped Izuku's hand a little tighter and walked closer to him. Izuku looked at his mom curiously. What was wrong? Well, if something was wrong, then his mom would protect him. He knew his mom wasn't helpless or anything. Especially when he saw he take down a mugger with a single hit. His mom was strong. He didn't need to worry. The stationery store was small, but Izuku's interest was piqued. It was a simple store with notebooks, binders, paper, pens, pencils, and other supplies. It was still cool. The walls were painted a bright blue with white and red accents that reminded Izuku of All Might. A bored-looking teenage girl was the cashier. He ran over to the notebooks immediately, his mom trailing behind him. She checked over her shoulder again, looking back at the food court. "Izuku, sweetie," Inko asked, "can you do something for me?" "What is it, Mom?" Izuku asked hesitantly. She seemed really on edge. "I'm going to leave to store to go see a friend in the food court. Can you stay here for Mommy? Please, Izuku?" "Stay here? Alone?" He doesn't want to leave his mom. Can't I go with you?" "Izuku, Midoriya, oh, please dear, please just stay here and don't leave. Please." Was his mom begging him to stay in the store right now? Why is she so serious about this? Well, what's he supposed to say? "Okay, Mom, I'll stay." His mom bent down and hugged him tightly. "I love you so much, Izuku. You're so brave. I love you." "I love you too, Mom." His mom quickly ran out of the store, clutching her handbag and unzipping it. "She's just meeting a friend. She'll be fine. You'll be fine." Izuku went back to picking out notebooks. He had all of his stuff ready for checkout. The cashier gave him a weird look as the 8-year-old took out the money his mom gave him. As soon as the cashier started to scan the items, Izuku heard it. The sound that he had grown accustomed to hearing right before getting hurt. The sound that meant something bad was going to happen to him. Izuku ran to the door to get a look at the mall. He saw it. The food court is in shambles. Bodies burnt to a crisp, stalls set on fire, the telltale signs of the aftermath of an explosion, and worst of all, there's absolutely no signs of life. There are no live people. His mom. Oh, how Izuku wants to book it out of the store. But he can't. He's frozen in fear as screaming people run past the stores. If he got caught up in that, he'd be trampled before he could make it out of the mall. He wouldn't be able to stop things like this in the future if he was dead. The tears were a given. They came out in droves. He fell to the floor of the store, only slightly aware of the cashier yelling. Then he heard the noise again. Another explosion was going off somewhere close. Izuku looked back up to the rest of the mall to see a store blow up in a mess of fire and debris. Then another goes, and another, until the mall is more shambles than stores. And they're still going. 2 people, villains, Izuku tells himself, walk out to the food court. One in a black business suit and a gold coin in their hand. The features of the villain are covered by the white mask that covers their entire face. The other villain seemed to have a mutation quirk. He was big, tough-looking. Huge horns that curve in on themselves sprout from his head. His skin was a dark brown, with shaggy fur in some places. Maybe he was a ram mutation. He was dressed in a similar suit, but with no jacket and just a white dress shirt. The coin villain is laughing to himself as more and more explosions go off. Izuku feels a pair of earmuffs go over his head. He looks up to see the terrified cashier putting on her own pair. She's shaking horribly, tears also going down her face, looking at the two villains. He looked back to see the ram villain picking up his mom. His mom is dead. The cries harder, but puts his hand over his mouth to muffle the whimpers. He couldn't afford for the villains to find him and the cashier. Then he hears a hissing noise and he and the cashier look back to see the cash register is smoking. Knowing what is coming next, Izuku tries to run. But he can't. He's frozen in fear as the inevitable explosion goes off. He closes his eyes and braces himself. The cashier runs in front of him, shielding him with her body as she takes the brunt of the explosion. Izuku opens his eyes again. Her back is covered in char, smoke, and debris as the explosion is done. The store around him has collapsed in, but he can't help but notice that nothing from the store fell on him. He takes another look at the dead girl in front of him and sees a white light coming off of her. Some sort of saving or luck quirk, his brain supplies, probably luck considering that it'd be considered really lucky to survive an attack like this. Izuku looks back to the villains. His mom is now being held by her collar by the coin villain. The ram villain seems to be turning over the debris, looking for something. Izuku pries his eyes away from the scene and looks around the mall. It's quiet with the earmuffs, and he can see that the explosions stopped. The mall is in shambles. It looks like explosions took place in every store. Izuku hears muffled voices coming from the area he just took his eyes off of. Voices. Izuku carefully removes the earmuffs, trying his hardest to not make any noise. He reaches for a notebook and a capped pen. Taking them carefully, he opens the page and listens in. Hopefully, he can hear something useful. "Did you find him yet?" the coin villain asked, seemingly annoyed. "We have to leave before the heroes come." "I'm looking for him," the ram yells. "Kinda hard to find him when they exploded every store here." "Stop screaming, you imbecile," hissed the coin villain as he checked the area, even if the destruction team did go overboard a bit. The ram villain looked back to his mom. What if she knew and hid him? Hid him. Izuku thinks, suddenly terrified as a thought crosses his mind. Are they looking for me? Then the kid is dead and Dragon has our heads. I really don't want to die, coin. Especially not by being cooked alive for not finding a kid. You won't if you just find the stupid boy already, Ram. Izuku hears sirens, police. Sheet. Coin says, what did he say to do with her? I don't know. Ram replies, just leave her. We need to get out of here. Coin dropped Inko to the floor. Izuku wanted to throw up. The two villains swiftly ran out of the mall. And so, Izuku was stuck there. Couldn't leave the store. He just had to wait for the rescue team to find him. Izuku curled into a ball and sobbed. He just wants this day to be over now. Izuku was accustomed to waking up from his sleep by loud, booming noises. Whether it be gunshots, explosions, or laughter from the villains in the dragon's den, living in a supervillain's hideout really mad you grow accustomed to loud noises. So, it wasn't really a surprise when a roar, which sounded an awful lot like Dragon himself, woke Izuku up from his sleep. Who said Dragon off? Hopefully, they didn't do it just to get Dragon to go hard on him in training again. It seemed like he fell asleep on his desk again. Izuku really didn't want to deal with Dragon finding out his hatchling didn't sleep in his horrendous green bed again. He just started getting up when he noticed what exactly he had been sleeping on and, holy shit, Izuku forgot to finish his analysis work. Did he want to finish it? Hell no, but he still needs to find out what happened to his memory before he dies. Okay, so maybe Dragon wouldn't kill him, but he really didn't want the sheet beat out of him by Dragon's men. His assignment was the hero makeshift. She was an underground hero, so Dragon had some of his men record her fighting to give Izuku information. Izuku was forbidden from going out on missions, for some reason. Makeshift's quirk was extremely fascinating, but then again, every quirk is fascinating to the quirkless boy. Izuku got to work on finishing the quirk and fighting style breakdowns, as those were the only things he had left to do. He had just finished when an alarm bell rang. Izuku groaned. That bell meant someone in the horde had done something to PSS Dragunov, so much he caused property damage to the building. Izuku hated that alarm with a burning passion. Izuku crossed his fingers and prayed that today wasn't a training day so that he could not go to sleep nearly dying of blood loss or with horrific burn wounds. He had enough scars, thank you very much. Izuku quickly grabbed his workbook and stuffed it into a small, fireproof, black backpack. Izuku wasn't worried about his work going missing, no. He was worried about Dragon burning up his work before he could turn it into him. Izuku started walking to the door when he realized he wasn't dressed. Sighing heavily, Izuku took off the backpack and went to his wardrobe. The cheap wood, you'd be wrong if you thought Dragon would treat his hatchling better than the rest of his horde, creaked as Izuku pulled out a drawer. Being an analyst that is forced to work with villains because of family had one singular perk. People were absolutely terrified of pissing you or your family off. That meant that the design people took extra care into Izuku's outfits. All of his clothes were made of the best fabric a villain can find, was blast and fireproof, and was designed expertly. So, when Dragon put in a request for his hatchling, they took it very seriously. They followed and met every requirement Dragon made. The actual clothes part of Hatchling's outfit were apparently pretty easy to make. It was a simple light gray, turtleneck, long-sleeve sweater. A darker gray, slash-proof overcoat was also a part of Hatchling's outfit. Black slacks and loafers filled Dragons, for some FNG reason, need to make every outfit of his horde have some sort of formal wear. But that wasn't the complete look. No, what made the look was the mask. The mask itself was some type of strong, tight-fitting material, with a see-through area for his eyes. The mask covered his eyes and nose but stopped just before his mouth. Izuku knew that Dragon's designers and makers were very cut out for their job. They made Dragon's mask cover his entire head and made his father look like an actual goddamn green dragon after all, but Izuku still was impressed every time he took a good look at the mask. Don't get him wrong, he hated the thing that made him look like Dragon even when he was working, but it was a appealing mask. The mask's paint job was careful and very intricate, the dark green scales looking so real that the horde thought he had a mutation quirk. The eyes that the mask had were bright red, the pupils slit, and intricate colors were in the eyes that made them look like they were affected by light when they really weren't. Then came to the top of his head. Where the mask ended, there were horns. They were an even darker green than the scales and curved to the back of his head like gazelle horns. In fact, he was pretty sure his and his father's mask horns were mainly made to look exactly like a gazelle's. As Izuku checked in the mirror to make sure the outfit was to Dragon's standards, before putting the mask on, his eyes wandered to the right side of his neck. He walked closer to the mirror and pulled down the turtleneck. The number 0 was written in big, bold black pen. Izuku smiled as he gingerly ran his fingers over the 0. Whenever he looked at it, his heart filled with a familial warmth that he hadn't felt with his actual family since he was 8. The 0 seemed to be dictated by his emotions somewhat because whenever he wanted to hide it from Dragon, it disappeared. Izuku had a feeling that Dragon wouldn't like it if he saw the 0. He'd probably try to burn it off. The 0 was a curiosity to Izuku. He knew that he must have gotten it sometime when he 9 or 10. See, Izuku couldn't remember those years. What he does remember is that right before the next school year started when he was 8, a mall exploded and killed his mom. Then there was nothing. He had missed 2 years of his life and he had no idea how he could possibly remember it. Dragon always got angry whenever Izuku asked, so he stopped asking. He just accepted that whatever happened, good things judging by how he feels about the 0, in those 2 years he was never going to remember. On that slightly sad note, Izuku put on his mask and left his room to go find Dragon. A majority of the horde hated Izuku, and he knew that. So when he left his room, he refused to make eye contact with anyone else. He got used to the stares that were filled with hatred. They couldn't hurt Izuku, hell, they couldn't even touch Izuku unless Dragon said they could. That was how it was with him. If Dragon said you could train hatchling, it meant that he was telling you to do as much harm as possible to him in the time he lets you. If Dragon says that hatchling wanted to analyze the hero you were after, He meant that hatchling was going to supply you with information whether you like it or not. What was worse, the only person hatchling was allowed to talk to was Dragon or a partner in an assignment. The Horde was currently in the bustle that Dragon's property damage outbursts usually caused. And, oh how Izuku was dreading having to go to his father with the backpack full of very important information on heroes. He prayed to whatever deity allowed him to have those 2 good years. He couldn't remember that Dragon wouldn't be too scrutinizing of him. Izuku stopped in front of the large wooden doors to his father's office. He caught the words exchanged in the Horde. Bettings on who'll be the next person to train, hatchling, laughter at the thoughts of how bad it will be, and very few words of sympathy from some of the older members of the Horde. Izuku carefully opened the door to the study and walked inside. Izuku takes a good look at the state of Dragon's office and wants to cry. Everything is in shambles or burnt to a crisp. What in the hell happened? Izuku had honestly never seen Dragon this angry before. Dragon's fist is against the opposite side of the room, away from Izuku, and smoke is curling out of his mouth. It was days like this that made Izuku wish he looked more like his mom more than his father. He had the same mess of wild hair as his father, it's just that his was green and not black. The same wide green eyes that Izuku would often see accompanied by a wild look in his father's and a more innocent one in his own. The freckles also came from his father, sadly. He really hated how he looked so much like the man. It doesn't matter if you look like him, Izuku. It matters that you him, his brain supplies. Why was that thought in the voice of someone who sounds sleep-deprived? Dear Dash, Izuku starts, then remembers what he's supposed to call him, father? Dragon turns around, still looking as angry as ever. What? I've brought the notebooks back, Izuku says, trying to keep his voice as even as possible. Dragon's mouth curls into a vicious smile. Good, my little hatchling. What do you want me to do now? How about you go outside for a bit? What? Outside? The first rule of the Horde is that hatchling is not allowed outside. Father, Izuku says cautiously, are you sure I can? Of course my little hatchling, where's the catch? Where's the catch? Where's the dash? But after we're going to have a day full of training. Oh, so that's it. He gets a small taste of freedom before everything goes back to normal and he gets beaten into the ground. Got it. Might as well make this a really good day. Thank you, father, Izuku says as he empties the backpack on the charred desk and hurriedly makes his escape out of the office. Izuku ran off into his room and hurriedly shuts the door. He quickly changes out of hatchling clothes and grabs some more civilian-looking clothes. A quick change into a white tank top and a pair of dark jeans later and Izuku is almost ready to go. There were 2 things that Izuku had gotten from Horde members. One was a pair of bright red shoes that Izuku treated like a treasure. He had only ever been allowed to wear dress shoes in dark colors, so the comfortable and bright colors were a nice change. The person from the Horde that gave him it was a red-haired man with purple burns that covered a good part of his body. The second item, from the same man, was a wig. It was a simple long blonde wig. These were the only 2 things that Izuku really cared about. The man that gave him the items never mentioned his name. Izuku carefully placed the 2 gifts into his bag and zipped it up. Izuku took a good look around his room and saw a note on the window. He walked up and read it. We don't want any of the Horde to see you, now do we, hatchling? Goddamn Dragon. So, Izuku pried open the normally locked window and peered outside. Huh? He didn't know he was 2 stories up. Izuku hopped out of the window and climbed down the side of the building. He immediately ran as far away as he could and went into the bathroom of a random store. Izuku hurriedly put on the wig, deciding to braid the hair, and slipped on the red shoes. His feet felt so free. He didn't realize that the 0 on his neck was showing. Izuku left the store excited to enjoy the momentary freedom he had been granted. Then he proceeded to see a large crowd of people talking furiously. Oh dear God, what now? Immediately intrigued, Izuku wandered over to see some kid getting attacked by a sludge-looking villain. The entire area around the hostage and the villain was on fire. Explosions were coming out of the kid's hands. That quirk is a lot like... Izuku looked around and saw the heroes on the scene. Lady, Kamui Woods, Backdraft and Death Arms. None of their quirks matched this type of encounter. Was that why they weren't doing anything? Death Arms shouted to the other heroes, "We just gotta wait for someone with the right quirk to show up." Izuku wanted to scream at the heroes to do their job, but instead, he looked back at the hostage. Short, spiky ash-blonde hair with choppy bangs, sharp bright red eyes, fair skin, explosion quirk, seemingly aggressive or angry. Izuku's train of thought came to a halt. One word filled his mind. Kaken. Izuku stopped thinking. The consequences of his actions didn't matter anymore. Nothing mattered because this is Kaken. This was the kid he hadn't seen or remembered since he was 8. Izuku grabbed the sharpest piece of debris he could find and pushed past the heroes and the crowd. He couldn't hear anything anymore. His mind filled with the need to save Kaken. Izuku stabbed the slime villain in the eye and pulled Kaken out of the slime. He didn't care if Kaken probably didn't want to be saved by him. Kaken didn't need to know it was him. Izuku took Kaken into a patch of road that wasn't on fire. He was only slightly aware of the sludge villain getting angry at him. He almost didn't see All Might stopping the villain. As the ringing in Izuku's ears stopped and the adrenaline wore off, he suddenly realized what he had just done. He also felt Kaken's gaze boring into him. He took a look at his childhood friend and realized Kaken was staring at his neck. A dark zero was there for the world to see. F-. Izuku hissed as he put his hand over his neck. He looked behind him and saw that the heroes were running towards the two of them. "Izuku," Kaken said, seemingly in disbelief, "where have you dash?" As much as Izuku wanted to talk, he couldn't let the heroes know who he was. Izuku ran away as fast as he could. After a while, he went into a store and changed back. He walked back to the horde, a little happy he was able to do at least one heroic thing in his life. The next day Izuku got the training Dragon promised him. As he was bandaging his wounds, he was a little happy to know that his father didn't know about the event. He was unaware of the news headline that spoke of a boy with a zero on his neck, or just the number of people this news affected. Aizawa Shota was very aware of the news headline. Hizashi and Namuri both had come over earlier today to make sure he had someone to fill the silence that he hated on today's date. It's been 4 years and the feeling he got today hadn't gotten better. His phone had gotten confiscated by his friends and they had put their own phones away as well. The three of them were eating breakfast at the table, Hizashi and Namuri talking as much as they could. All three of the phones started buzzing with text messages. The messages wouldn't stop, so ignoring the problem wasn't an option. Namuri got up to silence them when she caught a glimpse of the messages. Hizashi, Namuri's eyes were wide with shock, piquing her friend's interest in what the messages were about. "Turn on the news. Now." Namuri went back to silencing their phones as Hizashi and Shota walked over to the TV. As Hizashi turned the TV on, Namuri came back in and sat on the couch with them. The news was about a slime villain that had attacked Bakugo. Shota's heart clenched at the name. Then, there was a video of Bakugo's rescue. A short kid with freckles, familiar green eyes, and long brunette hair stabbed the villain in the eye and dragged Bakugo away. But the trio could only focus on one thing about the boy. The large zero written in pen on the right side of the boy's neck. The news droned on about how the kid ran away as soon as Bakugo was saved, but the trio of heroes stopped caring. Tears were falling down. All three of their cheeks, but none of them cared. As Shota let out a sob, Hizashi and Namuri seemed to get thrown back into reality. "Show dash," Hizashi said. Shota got up and took his phone out of Namuri's hand. He quickly rushed over to his room and shut the door. The suffocating silence didn't matter anymore. Shota looked through his phone. The group chat for the numbers was going off like crazy. Everyone, all 169 of them, was active. A good majority of them were asking how he was doing. He was glad they cared but couldn't respond. He went to his photos and went to the last photo he took of the kid. The little 10-year-old with happy green eyes and matching hair was taking a selfie with Shota ruffling his hair. A small smile went over his face and more tears followed. Looking up from his phone, Shota rubbed the number 5 on the inside of his right wrist. "Where are you, Izuku?" If there was one thing Izuku respected about Dragon's Horde, it was that they kept a professional attitude when working. Sure, they hated him, but they didn't get up in his face about their hatred. The Horde also cared about getting their jobs done in the best way possible, No funny business or stepping out of line. If anyone was unprofessional, Dragon would have a talk with them, and they'd act exactly like the rest of the Horde. This meant that a ton of the Horde's personality was hidden away and only shown when away from the building, Izuku's included. So, when a man-child of a human being stepped into the Horde, everyone took notice. And when he stayed a man-child, everyone began to wonder what was so important about this guy that Dragon let him stay around. Izuku gets that sometimes people came in to get specific members to go through with a plan, but this guy has been here for a month. He'd go in, talk to Dragon, and then walk around a bit until Dragon sent someone to tell him to leave. And he keeps coming back. How this man, the term ten, used very loosely here, wasn't burnt to a crisp yet was the new mystery in the warehouse. The dude gets set off at practically everything. Izuku had been out of his room to get his meal, which he'd need to take back to his room, and he'd witnessed an argument between the guy and a member of the Horde. The reason for the argument? They disagreed on a video game topic. He has some sort of disintegration quirk because Izuku had seen him put his hand on a chair and then the chair was gone. That probably also works on people. Great. Absolutely wonderful. And don't even get Izuku started on his godforsaken costume. He wears red sneakers, black breathes, and a black v-neck. The worst part though? He has FANG real human hands as part of his costume. Sure, they probably have some sentimental meaning or whatever, but come on. Human hands on a villain costume. Dragon has also been acting off since Hand Guy has been showing up. Izuku's been getting fewer assignments to do in his room and instead is being summoned to Dragon's office to analyze. The visits to dear old dad that Izuku dreads has increased from once or twice a month to once every week. That has severely put Izuku on edge. He absolutely despises visits to Dragon, when he has to walk on eggshells to do work he could have done in isolation. You know, like he had been doing for the past 4 years. Whatever the hell the Hand Guy was doing, Izuku didn't like it. And Dragon's office was exactly where Izuku was headed right now. Dragon had summoned him to get a new assignment. The messenger, one of the softer-hearted villains, warned him that Dragon seemed sad. Was Izuku scared? A little bit, but he's been in these sorts of situations before. As long as he was complacent he'd be fine. Izuku cracked the door open, and oh god that's Hand Dude. Why the hell is he in here? Izuku really wasn't going to be fine. You asked for me, father? Izuku said, pulling his eyes away from Hand Dude and looking at Dragon. But he didn't have his mask on. Oh, god this Hand Guy must be really important if his father took off his mask. Izuku, oh god no, he's using his name, please, sit and take off your mask. Izuku did as told and waited for Hisashi to continue. His father gestured to Hand Man, introduce yourself, Izuku. Oh no, please tell him he wasn't going to have to work with this guy. He was, wasn't he? Hello sir. I am Midoriya Izuku. My alias Hatchling. Shigaraki Tamura. Shigaraki scratched at his neck, looking annoyed. Shigaraki looked back to Hisashi. So, when can he start? Would you mind telling my son about your organization first? Hisashi asked, feigning a calm demeanor. Great now he said. Right? Shigaraki answered, still tearing at his neck. I lead a group called the League of Villains. We're planning to kill All Might. All right. That sounds FING terrifying. How the hell did this guy plan on killing All Might? What does this have to do with me? Well Izuku, you'll be supplying information to the League of Villains of course, Hisashi said, giving a big smile. That is all you're good for anyway. Ignoring that comment, fucker. So, why this meeting? You normally tell me who to supply to and leave it at that. Well, who knew that Hisashi could get any angrier with keeping a passive look? Shigaraki here wants you to supply to the League directly. Very directly. Please get to the point. Watch your mouth, son, Hisashi hissed. Izuku tensed and curled in on himself, then Hisashi glared at Shigaraki. You're going to be working in our headquarters instead of here. I am aware of all of the restrictions Dragon puts on you, so you'll still follow all of that. I just need you to do your job, Shigaraki answered. Working outside of the Horde's warehouse? Unless this League of Villains is much bigger than Izuku is guessing, then there's no way Izuku is getting direct footage of heroes. And one of the main rules is that he's not allowed to go on missions or outside in general. He also wasn't allowed computers, so how the hell was he supposed to get information? This is going to be an absolutely huge headache, isn't it? Could I have a little more information on this job? He asked. Maybe he should turn down the sass when speaking to his future and current boss. Please. Ah yes, Hisashi spoke up. You'll be with the League for a year, supplying information on every hero they give you. You'll be staying with them as well, so I assume they have somewhat accommodated for you to live there. The League is going to have you start as soon as possible, so you'll be packing as soon as you leave this room. You'll be staying with Shigaraki and his right hand. Oh, how Izuku wishes he could say no. He really didn't want to work with Shigaraki. Especially not for an entire year. Something also told him that the League didn't actually accommodate him and were really just giving him a room. But he can't argue with Dragon. Clearly, the League had a good amount of stuff to compensate for his absence. Not having him for a year would probably make the Horde turn exactly like how it was when he first arrived. Barely organized, unplanned and poorly communicated jobs, and barely any dent in the villain world. Nobody in the Horde would ever admit this, but Izuku being forced to help them was probably the best thing that happened to them. Izuku would probably have to fix the mess the Horde will turn itself into, but seeing the newer villains realize that the organization is a mess without him will be hilarious. Hell, maybe they mess up so badly that a major member will be arrested. That'd be a plus. Then, there's the fact that Izuku sincerely doubts that Shigaraki will actually follow the rules Dragon has. A lot of the restrictions are fine for the Horde because they had other analyzers to take on the stuff he's not allowed to do, but the League definitely didn't have any spares if they were paying for him. Finally getting to see why the hell he wasn't allowed to research certain heroes would be nice. Maybe they'd get him a computer and he could try to find out what happened when he was 9 and 10. But that was getting scarily close to wishful thinking. But his opinion didn't matter. Dragon says he has to go, so he has to go. Yes, father, Izuku said. Is there anything else you would like to tell me? Hisashi glanced at Shigaraki. Can you leave for this? Tisk, okay. Shigaraki walked out, hitting Izuku with his shoulder before he was out. Listen to me, hatchling. Izuku looked up to see his father had gotten up and had stood tall, making Izuku want to cower away. Yes. Izuku asked, trying to steady his voice and trying not to shake. You're not going to mess this up. Got it? You'll do as the League says or you'll have hell to pay for it when you come back here. We need this partnership if we want to further this organization more. Do you understand? Dread filled Izuku's stomach. He hated when Dragon talked like that. All the and are reminding Izuku that he was as much a villain as the rest of the people in the building. Talk like that made the thoughts and questions Izuku tried to push away resurface. How many heroes had died because Izuku gave someone the plans to kill? How many deaths were on Izuku's hands? He was as much a villain as everyone else in the Horde. He could have just denied working and dealing with the punishment, but he was too selfish to give his life for others. I understand, father. Good. That twisted smile spread across Dragon's face. Now how about you head to your room and pack? Izuku quickly grabbed his mask and pulled it on, leaving the office as soon as he could. As he tried to head to his room, he felt 4 fingers grab his arm. Looking back, Shigaraki was there. His hand was gripping Izuku's arm tightly, the pinky finger raised slightly. Acutely aware of his rising heartbeat, Izuku spoke up. Let go of me, he hissed, still trying to hold in his stutter and shaking, now. Shigaraki tilted his head as a grin spread across his face. You're not the boss of me, brat. But it's interesting that an NPC like you is so skilled. Izuku managed to get out of Shigaraki's grip and walked as quickly as he could back to his room. As soon as he made it back, Izuku shrugged off his overcoat and walked to the mirror. Pulling off his mask, Izuku took a good look at himself for the first time in a while. When had his eyes grown so dull? Dropping the need to hide his panic, Izuku's breath quickened. You'd think he'd get used to this, the whole being threatened by villains thing. But no, Izuku could only just fake being fine until he got to a place he could panic. It was pretty pathetic. He'd been living with villains for 4 years, and all he had to show for it was scars, analytic skills, and the ability to mask his emotions. Carefully pulling down his turtleneck, Izuku looked at the 0. Rubbing it slightly, his heartbeat went down as everything faded away. There was no looming threat of dragon. No fear of doing the wrong thing and getting beat for the sake of training. He could finally feel some peace in the storm that was his life. He was alone, no one but himself to worry about. When had isolation become something he had associated with safety? He really didn't know or care. He'd feel safe as long as he was alone with his Zero. As long as he had these few moments to cling on to, he'd be fine. With no future to stay alive for, he'd stay alive just so that he'd have moments of peace. Izuku gingerly pulled his turtleneck back up, letting the moment of bliss stop. But those moments were luxuries he really couldn't afford to lose himself in. He had a new boss to report to and a brand new workplace. Right now, he really needed to get packing. Izuku moved in with the League of Villains the next day. It has been 2 months since Bakugo had been saved by Izuku, and Shota was getting sad about the lack of progress being made. This was the first sighting of him in 4 years and they got nothing. Along with that, he had expelled all of his students this year. Sure, it left him with more time to find villains and get a tiny bit hopeful that they'd know about Dragon. But he really wished that at least some of his students could have potential. As soon as the buzz about Izuku reappearing came about, most of the UA staff went back to believing they'd never get him back. Shota wasn't one of those people, of course. He'd bring Izuku back home. He made a promise to the problem child and he planned to keep it. Right now, Shota was running across rooftops. Patrol had been pretty quiet, with a couple of muggings and an attempted robbery. But, sadly, nothing to do with Dragon. Then, as Shota was jumping over an alleyway, he heard the name. Dragon. Shota quickly hid and tried to get sight of the people talking. It was 2 men with non-mutation quirks. He was able to immediately recognize the 2 of them as known Horde members. One was Rush, whose quirk had something to do with causing adrenaline rushes. A very creative use of his quirk was causing multiple rushes on his victims and giving them heart attacks. The second man was Colors, whose quirk allowed him to change the color of any non-living object. His quirk was particularly annoying to stealth heroes when their clothes changed to neon yellow to better locate them. Of course, that wouldn't be a problem for Shota. He took out the voice recorder he carried around. "Thanks, problem child. Dragon's been so annoying lately, man." Colors complained, like, "We've made 0 progress in getting that makeshift beach out of commission. How the hell are we supposed to work if the boss is throwing a hissy fit every 12 seconds? Keep it down, dumps." Rush hissed, "If someone hears you complaining about Dragon, you're going to be dead tomorrow." As if anyone in this DMN organization could go to Dragon and tell on me. None of those guys are brave enough to do that. What is Hatchling hears you? Hatchling? That's a new name. Can't you tell? The kid's terrified of Dragon. I would be too with all the shit he's put through. Could Izuku. He's the only one that sees Dragon regularly. Not right now, he's not. A third voice, a woman's. Shota looks to where the voice came from and sees hot blood. Her quirk made her able to make her blood boil without harming herself. She was one of the higher ranked in the Horde. Hot blood. Rush said, suddenly seeming very cheerful. Well, as cheerful as a murderer could be. "It's great to see you." "Yeah, it's been a while, Rush. You both were talking about Hatchling, right?" "Yeah," Colors says, looking suddenly very tense. "What did you say about the kid not seeing Dragon as much? You know that one guy that hung around the warehouse for a bit? The one that couldn't be professional to save his life? The one Whiteout got into an argument with?" Colors asked, "What about him? Didn't you notice how the brat only visited Dragon when that guy was around? Clearly it was some sorta new assignment for the kid." That'd make sense with how Hatchling hasn't been coming out of his room as often. "As 2 months ago," Rush said. "Anyways, us 3 are going to be going after Makeshift soon. We need to head back to the warehouse." As the 3 villains started making their way out of the alleyway, Shota pocketed the voice recorder and used his capture weapon to trap the 3 of them. Hot Blood tried to attack him by cutting her wrist, but he quickly erased her quirk. They tried struggling but stopped when they realized they'd truly been caught. "So, I'm going to take you 3 in. Don't try to use your quirks or anything, they won't work," he said, quickly making a call for a police car to come. Of FNG course, it's Eraserhead, Colors muttered. Now, while we wait, Shota took out the voice recorder again. You three are going to tell me about hatchling. The sun was going down by the time Izuku was found. It must have been hours. Hours of him sitting there in the store, with tears streaming down his face and a notebook clutched to his chest. He remembered falling asleep for a bit, but he had woken up still in the mall. He really just wanted to get some rest without worrying about not being found. He was going to get up when the piece of debris blocking the door was moved out of the way. He didn't recognize the person that found him. The person was a man with black hair that stood on end, yellow goggles on his eyes, and baggy black clothes. He also wore what looked like an off-white scarf around his neck. Izuku really couldn't tell if he was a hero or not. He was really scary looking, so he quickly scooted back. The man seemed to notice him and seemed to relax. The man's hair fell to his shoulders and he took off his goggles to show black eyes. "Hey kid," the man said. His voice was really gruff and sounded like he was sleep-deprived. "Are you hurt at all?" Izuku shook his head. "He hero?" he asked shakily. The man nodded his head. "Yeah, I'm a hero. Can you come over here?" Izuku carefully walked over to the hero, still clutching the notebook. The hero gave him a once-over. "What's your name, kid?" the hero asked, crouching down to Izuku's height. "Midoriya." Midoriya is Izuku. Izuku wiped at his eyes, trying to stop the tears. "Okay, Midoriya, can you come with me?" the hero asked, slowly weaving towards the door. Izuku followed the hero carefully, making sure not to step onto anything that's hurt him. As the pair made their way out of the store, Izuku saw what was left of the food court. He in his breath and his breathing sped up as he saw his mom's body. The hero took a second to look where Izuku was looking and back to Izuku. Then the hero stepped in front of Izuku's field of vision. "Midoriya, can I pick you up?" Izuku nodded. "Okay, can you also close your eyes?" Izuku did. "You can open your eyes again when I tap your back." He felt himself get picked up, and then he started moving. He really wanted to fall asleep, but he couldn't just do that without giving the heroes the notebook. After a bit of silence and moving around, the hero tapped Izuku's back. Izuku peeled his eyes open. He was still in the hero's arms, but he could hear the sirens from ambulances and police cars growing louder. He pushed his hands onto his ears but kept his eyes open. "Too loud," he muttered. The hero stopped and sat Izuku down on a bench. The sirens stopped growing louder, and Izuku took his hands off of his ears and looked up at the hero. He was currently making hand gestures, sign language, to other heroes. He noticed that some of the other heroes included Present Mike and 13. "Midoriya, sure you aren't injured?" the hero asked, turning back to Izuku. "And no, the cashier's quirk saved me," he answered. He tapped the hero, who had gone back to signing to the other heroes, heard the villain's tea-talking. The hero gingerly took the notebook and opened it. His eyes widened as he continued to read. Once he was done, he looked back to Izuku like he wanted to ask something. "The woman that they were talking about was my mom," Izuku forced out. He was growing really tired of talking. "Can I sleep, hero?" "It's Eraserhead, and yes, you can sleep." The hero sat with Izuku as he curled into a ball. "You were really brave, kid. A real hero." "Nada, hero that can't be that thanks." Izuku drifted off to sleep. Shota wasn't expecting to see a collapsed mall right before the beginning of his patrol. He wasn't a rescue hero, but he saw that no people were being patched up or anything and decided to help. He really wasn't expecting to be the one to find the only survivor out of the 250 people that were in the mall. The worst part? The only survivor was an 8-year-old. Not to mention that the 8-year-old saw his mom die in front of his eyes from an attack that was made by his, probably, father. Only the heroes knew of the child. None of the media was able to get information about the survivor. Midoriya was currently in a hospital for protection more than health reasons. Apparently, the child refused to talk about what happened. In fact, he refused to talk at all. Shota was being brought in with Detective Tsukachi Naomasa, who had a lie-detecting quirk. The kid was sitting in his hospital bed, messing with the sheets. As Shota and the detective walked in, Midoriya seemed to perk up at the sight of the hero and waved at him. "Hey, Midoriya, Shota said, taking a chair while Tsukachi stood next to him. Would you mind telling us about the mall attack? Midoriya's shoulders slumped and he curled up into a ball, but he answered with a whisper, yes. A little smile spreads across Tsukachi's face as he takes out a pen and notepad. Go on, kid. My mom and I were going to buy school supplies for the new year. Mom was acting a little off. As she was checking behind her and holding my hand tighter. As she'd get really anxious whenever we walked by the F food court. When we made it to that stationery store I was in, as she said that she needed to see a friend in the F food court and that I needed to stay in the S store. I went to pay for the items, when I heard the E explosion. I ran to the door and saw that the F food court had E exploded. People were running past the store, so I didn't leave and get tea trampled. The cashier lady was yelling something, but then the other stores also E exploded. Two people, I think they were villains for D-Dragon, walked towards the F food court. One was in a black business S suit and a gold coin was in their H hand. The villain's face was covered by a white M mask. I think he was called C-Coin. The other villain had some sort of RAM mutation quirk. He was big, tough-looking. Huge horns that curved in on themselves came out of his head. His skin was dark brown, with fur in some places. He was wearing a similar S suit, but with no jacket and just a white dress shirt. The RAM villain picked up my mom's B-body. Then the cashier put earmuffs on my head and the cash register exploded. The cashier ran in front of me and was glowing. Her quirk must have done something to save me because I was completely okay. The E explosions in the mall stopped going off and then the C conversation in the notebook I gave you happened. The kid quickly shut his mouth as tears poured off his face. He curled tighter into a ball. Shota ruffled his hair to try to comfort him somewhat. Shota looked at Tsukachi, who just nodded at him to tell him the story was true. Thanks, kid, this is really going to help us, Shota stated as he looked back at Midoriya, the Tsukachi. Who's he staying with? The detective flipped through his notebook and stopped at a page, the Bakugas. The child gave a little whimper at the name, catching the attention of the two adults in the room. What was wrong? Then, there was a little creak as the door to the room opened and a certain principal. The white animal smiled as he entered the rook. Midoriya perked at the sight of the animal. He looked like he was plotting something. Actually, Nedzu said, Midoriya here is going to be placed in witness protection. Yup, definitely plotting something. Izuku was 4 months into his time with the League of Villains when a very important event happened. He had been surprised when the League followed Dragon's rules. They had been trying their best to give him video of heroes. It wasn't a lot, but he could work with it. Right now, he needed to turn in an analysis of a hero they had given him. He made his way out of the room they gave him. Kurogiri was behind the bar, drying a glass, and Shigaraki was watching the news. I have that analysis you wanted, Izuku says to no one in particular. He learned that when he did this, either Kurogiri or Shigaraki would walk up to get it, making him at least slightly satisfied that they'll listen to him somewhat. Shigaraki spoke up, bring it here, brat. Or not. Izuku walked towards the man and held out the page. Shigaraki took it with his pinky finger raised. Look. Shigaraki pointed to the TV and Izuku's eyes followed. The Dragon's Den had been raided by heroes. Around 75 villains were arrested. But the most important part was that Dragon had also been arrested. His father was now going to go to Tartarus. Izuku was so happy he could cry. Then, Shigaraki spoke up and he wanted to cry for a different reason. Guess that means you're ours now. Izuku's stomach filled with dread. He had dreamed of the Dragon's Den being taken down for 4 years. He had fantasized about the idea of him finally getting out of the hellhole he was a part of. To stop being a villain. And now the fact that he was practically sold to a different villain organization was bringing him away from that. He's so close, he refuses to give up now. He'd have to lie his way out of this one, huh? I'm Dragon's heir and his main lair just got raided. In fact, it was probably raided because I wasn't there to remind the group leaders to not let the others outside. What the F? Do you mean that I'm yours now? Izuku argued, his voice rising. He doubted that he was Dragon's heir, even though the second part was probably true. Shigaraki stood up with a twisted smile on his face. Sure, you might be his heir. Wait, what? But you know that none of those NPCs cared about your contributions. You may have been running the place, but they couldn't give a shit if you stayed here. They all hate you so much, hatchling. No one is going to accept you as their leader. You're ours now. I'm not yours just because Dragon sold my analysis for AY-. Izuku was cut off by Shigaraki grabbing his wrist. White-hot pain seared through his arm, Dragon's fire breath burned at Izuku's skin. He was 10, recently kidnapped by Dragon. He had tried to prevent this for 2 years. All of it was for nothing. The pain was unbearable, he just wanted to go home. Back to Sho, back to Kaken, back to his family. Dragon started talking. Hatchling? What the hell was that? Izuku felt at his face, no tears. But he took a look at his wrist. A handprint was now there. He looked up to see what looked like Kurogyari yelling at Shigaraki. Was he on the floor? He looked to his right to see blood on the floor. How long was he dash? He tuned into the argument that was taking place. He's fine. The NPC will go through worse if he acts like that here. Shigaraki argued. But he was staying with the League now. Look. He's conscious, isn't he? Izuku turned to look at Shigaraki. Shigaraki looked enraged and grabbed at Izuku's shirt. Shigaraki lifted Izuku up. You listen to me, you little sheet. You are ours now. The Horde isn't going to want you. Those restrictions that Dragon keeps on you are gone. And now you're going to be analyzing the heroes we actually want you to. We'll get you a computer because you aren't worth the money being spent on getting footage of heroes. Why the hell he keeps those restrictions on you, I don't care about. You're useless Deku, to us with all of those restrictions. Why the hell was he going into a rant? And we'll start with the hero Eraserhead first. Eraserhead? Why did that name so familiar? Comforting even. He'd deal with that when he came to it. Right now he had to figure out what that flashback had been about. Shota slammed his fist into the wall of the empty teacher's lounge. Those 3 months of planning. All of that time it took to get the raid done. And they had come up with nothing regarding Izuku. He wasn't. Shota took his fist off the wall and replaced it with his head. He just wanted his kid back. Nedzu walked in with a cup of tea in his paws, the number 1 clearly visible on the back of his left. He probably wanted to tell Shota something important. Shota looked back to the principal, waiting for the news. We'll find our ward soon, Aizawa. Nedzu took a sip of his tea. On a still important note, All Might will be a teacher next year. Shota closed his eyes and groaned. So he's the new 170, huh? Izuku had been holed up in his room for about 2 days now. The League had kindly given him a computer to work on the Eraserhead analysis. To be honest, it was a really crappy computer. It had a search engine and that was about it. And he was getting nowhere with the Eraserhead analysis. Eraserhead was possibly the most elusive hero Izuku had to analyze. So instead of doing what the League had told him to do, he decided to try to find out what bits of his memory were missing. He knew that he had been kidnapped by Dragon from the time Shigaraki had attacked him. He also knew that Kaken seemed to be a comforting person instead of the bully that Izuku remembered. There was also a person named Sho that Izuku knew. He had people that he considered family somewhere. But that wasn't a lot of information. He was able to deduce that Kaken must have mellowed out or apologized in the 2-year memory gap, and that the Sho person must have been important if he was the first person Izuku thought about when thinking of home. Izuku was still frustrated as to how he met the people he considered family and to how Kaken had mellowed out and become a comforting figure for past Izuku. He started by simply looking up from where he believed his life got flipped upside down, the mall that exploded. Working through the seemingly endless reports of villain attacks on malls was futile, so he tried to recall all he knew about the attack. He was at a mall with a stationery store 6 years ago, where every store exploded from the inside, and he was the sole survivor. With the now substantially narrowed down search results, he began looking. After an hour, he found what seemed to be what he was looking for. The report matched what little Izuku remembered almost perfectly, with one key factor he had forgotten. Dragon was the one that had instigated the attack. His father had killed his mother, probably when trying to find him. The memory still wasn't there, but some of the blanks were now filled. Izuku still had no lead on how to figure out what was up with the 0 on his neck, But having another reason to hate his father was always something Izuku welcomed. Zero was Izuku's biggest mystery and frustration. He felt like the answer to the question of, where did it come from, was right in front of him, but he was blocked access to it. It must be somewhere in his FING memory that was really starting to PSS him off now. Why was it that what seemed to be some of the most important or comforting parts of his life was blocked off from him? He really just wanted answers, but it seemed that every answer he got was either fake or led to even more questions. The answer of, "Dragon killed Mom," was obvious, but the way kept bugging Izuku. It was another answer that felt like the Zero situation, blocked off from him by his lack of memory. He decided to distract himself from his confusing past with the one thing he was good for, analyzing people. But the more Izuku tried to analyze Eraserhead, the more he realized that the feeling of information being blocked off from him wasn't going away. The exact same feeling was happening with Eraserhead. The little information really bugged him. He felt like he should have more on this hero despite this being his first time analyzing him. He was able to find out some of Eraserhead's fighting style, what his quirks seemed to be, his support gear, and that he taught a UA. That was all he had. The knowledge that Eraserhead fought close quarters in mainly stealthy ways, that the hero had some sort of erasure quirk that seemed to do with his eyes, that he had a capture scarf to detain his enemies, and that he was a teacher was all Izuku had on the hero. Eraserhead was so elusive that Izuku couldn't even get his name. But there was something different about this feeling of being blocked off. The want to know from the mall attack was different than the sheer importance Izuku felt when he couldn't find Eraserhead info. He felt like it was really important that he knew more about Eraserhead. So Izuku started writing down everything he knew Dragon refused to let him look into. It was mostly certain heroes, but the heroes had one thing in common. They all taught at UA at one point. That was the only similarity between the 12 heroes he knew for a fact he wasn't normally allowed to look into. He quickly opened the UA school site to see if there was anything in plain sight. Brat. And that's Shigaraki. Izuku quickly gathered up his stuff and walked out of his room. He walked down the hallway to the bar. Yes. Izuku asked, "Is there something you need?" "I'm kinda busy." "Watch your mouth." Izuku felt himself seize up at the thought of the same thing that happened 2 days ago happening again. "How are you healing, Midoriya?" Kurogiri asked. Izuku felt at his, now bandaged, wrist. "Fine. You're going to answer some of our questions now," Shigaraki stated. "Sit." Izuku did as he was told, trying to hold his tongue. "What do we call you now?" "Hatchling." That's kind of the point of Izuku's alias. "No. That name was for your old boss to use. You're getting a new one. Can't you just use my name?" "You're not useful enough for that. An NPC needs an easy name. I'm calling you Brat until something comes up." "Just great." He was going to be rebranded in the league. It wasn't like he'd spent 4 years of his life going by one name and now he would be called by something completely different. No. The second question, it was Kurogiri who was asking, "Do you know why Dragon had such serious restrictions of you?" He probably thought that if I truly knew what I was doing I'd stop. I, of course, wasn't stupid enough not to take the hint when I asked him about the restrictions. I also knew exactly what he was doing. I wasn't really surprised when I found out he killed my mom. Some of this was a lie, but a bit of it was the truth. Izuku knew now that he had something to do with UA and the restrictions were to make him believe the lie that he wasn't kidnapped. Izuku wasn't surprised when he found out about Dragon killing his mom. Third question, it was Shigaraki again. "One of those demon rules was that we couldn't ask about your quirk. Tell us what it is." "I know all those NPCs thought you had some sort of mutation, but that was a mask. What's really your quirk?" Izuku really didn't want to tell them, but he had to. "I'm quirkless." There were a few seconds of silence before Shigaraki started cackling. "You really are as useless as Dragon said. So analysis is really all you're good for?" "Yes," Izuku forced out. He knew how to effectively frame murder, he knew tons of fighting styles that he could switch between seamlessly during a fight. His pain tolerance was so high that he could barely feel stab wounds. But no, he was useless. "Wait, Kurogiri. Can't you pronounce Izuku as Deku?" "Oh no. Oh god, no, anything but that name again." Please, no, not the name. I think I like that. So, you're not hatchling anymore. Your new name is Deku. Why did life hate him so much? Izuku found out about it by pure accident. He had spent another 3 months with the League. They kept giving him assignments on current UA heroes. Izuku figured that they were probably going to attack UA, but he couldn't figure out why. The goal of the League was to kill All Might, not attack kids the same age as him. He really hated how nothing the League did made sense. He really spent most of the 3 months trying to figure out how to access UA files. He couldn't find anything on the normal site, and they had no pages about the teachers. He was slightly aware that the entrance exams would take place in 2 months. It was a shame that he could never be a hero. This year would have been the year he applied. A pang of sadness shot through Izuku, but he quickly ignored it and went back to looking for more info on Midnight. It was easier to get information on her than Eraserhead or one of the other underground heroes on staff. He'd seen enough people from the Horde come back to the Dragon's Den asleep to understand what her quirk did. Izuku looked through his assignments and realized something. Midnight was the 12th UA teacher he had been given. You know, like Midnight. Izuku really liked puns, even if it was something he had to hide. The idea of assigning the UA staff numbers was a funny thought. Nedzu would probably be 1, Midnight would be 12, and 13 would be 13. The number system. He typed out UA staff number system and pressed enter, but realized that he hadn't searched to the search bar. He moved his mouse to open the search tab when the UA site went black. Names in white lettering went over the black screen. They were normal names, then hero names, then a number, and finally a body part. Izuku touched his neck, feeling the safety of his zero wash over him. Did he just find exactly what he was looking for by accident? He scrolled through the list. The names and numbers that matched up with the heroes felt right. It felt like the numbers belonged next to the heroes' names. He looked at the names on numbers 1. The names felt the most right out of all of them. Izuku felt like he was the one that picked them out. Nedzu has the number 1 on the back of his left paw, with Recovery Girl a 2 on the inside of her left hand. Lunch Rush has 3 on his right shoulder blade, and Hound Dog a 4 on the nape of his neck. It made sense. If the numbers matter for communication or something, then the people that talk to the entire school made sense to have the first 4 spots. Eraserhead Izawa Shota. Izuku took a look at the name and Sho immediately came to mind had the number 5 on the inside of his right wrist. Present Mike was after him with a 6 on his tongue, and Power Loader has the 7 on his stomach. The 8 was on Ectoplasm's left elbow, a 9 was on Snipe's right calf, 10 was behind Vlad King's right ear, and 11 was on top of Cementas's head. The final 2 were Midnight with her 12 located on her left collarbone and 13 with 13 on the left bicep of their suit. Those 2 were very obvious puns. What the hell was this doing here? This seemed to involve Izuku, with the familiarity to the numbers and people. But he was either 9 or 10. What did he do? Izuku scrolled to the bottom of the list and saw an entry that probably was top secret. It also was most likely the reason the League wanted info on UA heroes. There, at the very end of the list, laid a few words that finally made Izuku understand why the League was so interested in UA. Yagi Tashinori, All Might, 170, to be determined. What the hell did Izuku just find? As he had his silent freakout session, the page updated. Shota was always here for when the staff received or lost their numbers. He was the one to bring in the pen or eraser. He was also the one to update the secret page on the UA website they made in case Izuku had a computer. So here he was, a laptop under his arm and a pen in his hand. All Might waited patiently for the principal to take the pen Shoyuta held out. He and Nedzu would always give or take away numbers in Nedzu's office. It had been the place where numbers 1 to 4 got their numbers from Izuku, so it stayed where numbers were to be given or taken. Nedzu carefully took the pen in his paw and walked over to the true form of All Might. Nedzu uncapped the pen and All Might lifted up his shirt to show the scar that spread across the left side of his chest. Nedzu wrote a perfect 170 over the scar, making All Might the newest number of UA Izawa, filled in the to be determined with a left side of chest, and updated the page. Nedzu recapped the pen and handed it back to Shota, who took it. Nedzu nodded to Shota, and so Shota spoke. Now, Shota said in the most serious tone he could muster, I'll be telling you about the reason for the numbers. A secret little inventor with a 0 on his neck and how we, the UA faculty, has made a promise to bring him back here, home. A certain Midoriya Izuku. The voice of present Mike filled Shota's ears. He sat in the tower with the rest of the teachers, all watching the screens as Mike yelled at the examinees to get moving. Shota watched as they went through the exam, earning themselves villain points and rescue points as the exam went on. He was only really paying attention to one student, Bakugo. Shota really wasn't looking forward to this year's entrance exam. Sure, he never really looked forward to them, with their bias towards physical quirks. So many great hero candidates failed the exam and were put in general education, himself included. He'd always look forward to the sports festival more than the exam for that exact reason. Then there was the factor of the problem children. Whenever he thought about the exam, his mind would immediately go to how his problem child couldn't take it. Sure, Izuku wouldn't have to because he had shown potential when living in UA, but Shota knew Izuku would take it anyways. And then there was Bakugo. He had seen the kid go through multiple positive changes through the 2 years he'd come by, but whenever he saw the kid his heart would clench. He didn't know how the loss of his best friend was affecting Bakugo. The kid didn't stop by UA anymore, but he didn't seem to neglect his dreams. Shota watched as the problem child's villain score grew higher and higher. The kidnapping probably motivated him to become a hero that could find Izuku. Taking his eyes off the explosive 15-year-old, Shota looked to the other screens displayed overhead. A wide battlefield and limited time were meant to bring out the best in the students. Shota's eyes caught an examinee using his arms as ears and eyes, a great intelligence gatherer. Shota shrunk his face into his capture weapon to hide the fond smile that appeared when he saw Tensei's little brother running around, a mobility expert that'll never be late to a fight. He squinted as he looked at a very flamboyant kid with a laser on his stomach destroy a robot, a decision-maker who can cope with seemingly any given situation. A mess of blonde hair caught Shota's eyes again. Bakugo stood in a mess of robot parts, hands smoking from his explosions. And then the natural-born warriors. Shota continued watching as the zero-pointers were released. How would Bakugo react? Knowing him, he'd probably recognize it was a gimmick and get more points. The zero-pointers tore through the buildings as examinees ran away. Bakugo looked over at the robot, turning to run after the robot's worth points when he stopped and looked at the feet of the gimmick. Shota followed the problem child's gaze and oh, that's another examinee. He continued watching as Bakugo seemed to be arguing with himself in his head, just standing there staring at the girl. Then the kid with 75 villain points and no rescue, top of the exam, ran towards the villain with his hands cupped. Shota could feel the happiness radiating off of Hound Dog as the kid obliterated the robot to save another examinee. That's going to be a ton of rescue points. Those anger management courses must have done wonders. Only a few other teachers caught the sad smile the boy wore as he fell and the girl he saved got up. Shota and the rest of the teachers got up as Mike called the exam done, but it only took a few moments for the organized pro-heroes to go into chaos. 1 moment, to be exact. Shota felt a pinch on the inside of his right wrist. He rolled up his sleeve, only slightly aware of the yelling and tears of the teachers surrounding him, and took a look at his wrist. The black 5 had turned green, the color of his problem child. He clutched his wrist to his chest as a smile spread across his face and tears dropped from his, now closed eyes. Izuku was still fighting to come home, he was still alive. Izuku was going to break this computer. He's been with the League for another 2 months. In yet another 2 months, he would have been with them for a year. He had probably turned 15 sometime around when he started in the League now that he thought about it. He couldn't really remember what day was his birthday without any calendars. In the 2 months he's been with the League since discovering the number system, he had made no progress in finding out what was so specific about his number. The League was also giving him less and less work, so he ended up going through all 170 of the current UA staff. He still needed to turn in the last 5 analyses he'd finished. So that led him to right now, where he wanted to throw the laptop on the ground and stomp it into oblivion. Izuku had tried all of the keywords for the method he learned from UA's staff number system. He had tried his name, zero, neck, dragon, show, kaken, and any other word he could come up with, but none of them gave him any progress in finding out about his zero. If this site was made for him, you'd think he'd know how to access it. Well, they probably weren't expecting his memory to be wiped, changed, lost. Whatever happened, they probably weren't expecting it. What does he know about his zero? It's somehow related to every hero in UA. It is connected to the people he considers family. Then, what does he know about UA? They have the number system. UA is considered the top hero school. Could that be it? Something to do with school? PRDS, classes, subjects, teachers, students. Students? What if that was it? Something relating to students? Student zero? Student zero, Izuku muttered, repeating the words to himself a few more times. I am student zero. He had found, at most, the keywords and a part of it at least. He stated, I am student zero, a couple more times. It was that same feeling of right he got from looking at the list of numbers next to names. Izuku gingerly typed out the phrase, earning him a short flash of black on the site. Intrigued, he repeated the phrase to get the same result. How ironic, the day any normal kid could become a student, he finds out he was considered one. He leaned back in his chair. So he was student zero, and then that name was part of the answer to unlocking another part of the site. Since this part was about him, there must be something in there about his zero or what it does. He was close, but he didn't solve it yet. There must be a part that he was missing if that one phrase turned the screen black. Something he hadn't thought of yet. But what was it? Izuku leaned forward again. He was zero, what does that imply? He wasn't important? No, if he considered them his family they wouldn't use that. Right? He really needs to figure out what exactly a family is supposed to act like. Try giving anything to him and he'll copy it, like addition? Was being adaptable part of it? No, that just doesn't sound like past him. Izuku was able to easily adapt now, but unless he changed a lot in 2 years, he would have acted the same as he did when he was 8. He really wasn't able to adapt back then, since he couldn't realize that without a quirk he couldn't be a hero. Changes the solution to what he wants? Like multiplying by 0? That still just doesn't feel right. The starting point? 0 comes before all the other numbers. You have to start at 0 if you want to create any new numbers. So, the creator, student 0? Izuku quickly tested out the phrase. The site flashed black again, but longer than when he had just typed in student 0. He must have been getting closer. What are some synonyms to creator? Maker? Designer? Builder? He tried those 3, receiving the same long flash from the first time he tried. What about inventor? He typed out the inventor, student 0, and got what he was looking for. White text on a black screen popped up. Midoriya Izuku, student 0, inventor of the number system, ward of UA, kidnapped. He was a ward of UA. He had lived in the top hero school. Izuku had expected a lot of reasons for being related to UA, but that wasn't one of them. The reason being that heroes were suspicious of him was fine. The reason being that they wanted information on Dragon was fine. But the reason being that UA had taken him in for his protection wasn't something he could fathom. Did that mean it was planned to have him go to UA to be a hero? But he's quirkless, he can't be a hero. Izuku shook his head. He needs to go to UA to get answers, which means he'll have to fight to go there. He turned his head to the 5 pages left to turn into the league. He had been cutting back on the quality of the analysis he gave since he figured he was connected to UA, but he had never tried to falsify information. Izuku erased the analysis he had written on each of the heroes' fighting styles and replaced it with believable but false information. He got up and placed his pen in his pocket. He got rid of any evidence of the site. He left his room into the empty hallway. As he made his way towards the bar he heard voices. One he could recognize as Shigaraki, the other was a mystery. It sounded like a man, but that was all Izuku could tell. He waited by the door to the bar and eavesdropped. The Nomu, Shigaraki spoke, how is it? Wonderfully Tamura, the other voice spoke. Given name? With the progress being made, it will be able to defeat All Might. He has grown weaker. Honestly, Izuku wasn't surprised. His only purpose is to analyze. He wouldn't be caught dead missing the signs of slowing in All Might's work. Of course, that meant when Shigaraki asked him to write down what he knew, he didn't write that specific detail. Sensei, Shigaraki was speaking again, you said that you wish there were more quirkless so you could test what a Nomu with a quirkless base would be? Yes, the other voice responded. Is this about that analyst you picked up from Dragon? His son, I believe? Yes. He's quirkless, Sensei. Deku has finished analysis on all of UA. Once we kill All Might, the NPC won't be of use to us. Normally another dead quirkless won't matter, but this Deku is very important, Tamura. You've noticed how Dragon restricted him on all of the UA staff, correct? They're going to kill me after they kill All Might, Izuku thought. I won't ever know what's going on with you. Really, Sensei? Sheet. Izuku had tuned them out in his panic. Stupid. 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 Yes, Tamura. He's actually been outside of the door for this entire conversation. I'll be going, don't make too much of a mess. The door to the bar burst open to reveal a said-off Shigaraki. 4 fingers grab the neck of Izuku's shirt. Izuku struggles to get free as the enraged Shigaraki clutches his shirt tighter. What do you know about UA? Shigaraki is screaming at him, tell me. No. Izuku is sick of not fighting for what he wants. Why the hell would I tell you? Izuku screams back. Shigaraki's other hand grabs Izuku's left elbow. Tell me. The pain shot through Izuku like a bullet. He let out a scream. Hurts. 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 Shigaraki is still screaming at him to talk. Izuku's ears get droopy. Don't you dare pass out Deku. Kaken yelled through the phone. Izuku liked Kaken, but the explosive boy could be such a brat. I'm going to sleep, Kaken, Izuku answered. Sho told me to go to sleep like an hour ago. Stay up. Guess. Begging? What happened to your pride, Kaken? I hear that you dash. Izuku hung up on his best friend. Cursing his mumbling habit, he looked at the clock. It was 11 p.m. Izuku curled into his blanket. He was really excited for tomorrow. The number system had just been finished and he had given out numbers 1 to 5. He really wanted to give out the other numbers to the staff, but writing that many numbers would end up being boring. He really didn't want to sleep, but Sho would get mad if he didn't. The hypocrite. He smiled as he thought about getting up the next morning. Izuku closed his eyes and started drifting off to sleep. When there was a loud crash in his room and he sprang up from his bed in a fighting stance. 3 people were in his room. Is this the hatchling? One of them said. He looks exactly like Dragon. Dragon. His father was coming for him. As one of the other villains nodded, Izuku was grappled in some sort of blue goop. The goop covered his eyes and ears, so he couldn't see or hear. Izuku felt himself being lifted up. Izuku thrashed in the grip until his hand was to his neck, right where his 0 was. He pinched his 0. He knew that the panic pinch was going to cause chaos in the 5 numbers. But they needed to know now instead of later. I'm going to fight to come home. I'll stay alive for my family. Izuku woke up on the floor of the room the league gave him. At least, that's what he thinks it is. The surrounding area was stripped of all furniture. Izuku's eyes caught the chains that wrapped around his ankles, which dug into the ground to stop him from walking. But Izuku's mind was still on the memory. That had been the moment he was kidnapped by Dragon. His hand hovered over his 0. A panic pinch? I can tell them. Izuku pinched his 0. I'm fighting to come home. I'm alive. The media is the worst. This Shota learned quite a long time ago. The media are vultures. So when All Might turned out to be a UA teacher, they immediately ate that up. Which led to now, where the students are being bombarded with questions. Shota made his way to the gate. He saw a couple of general education kids point at their shoulders, showing their 2-button epaulets instead of the 1-button hero courses. Shota made his way to the people harassing the hero course. Shota watched Bakugo push past a reporter mentioning the sludge incident. Suddenly, a microphone is moved into his face. A male with glasses and black hair swept to the side spoke. You're a mess. Who are you anyway? Shota moved his hand in a go-away motion. He's off today. You're interrupting our classes. Please leave. Shota turned away to walk back inside now that all of his students were in the school. Then the UA barrier went off. God damn it. Shota walked back to his classroom. After going over the battle training, Shota told 1A to go and pick a representative. The 18 students in the class, he'd expelled 2 of them, ended up with Ida and Momo being tied for class president. Deciding to decide the answer tomorrow, the class left. Shota was now in the teacher's lounge, sleeping of course. Mike then came barging in, fuming. Sighing, Shota sat up to look at his best friend. Mike was almost always so happy-go-lucky, so seeing him this angry wasn't something you'd see often. Mike firmly sat down on one of the couches. "Want to talk about it?" Shota asked. "You won't believe what they said about you." Mike responded. "Oh, so that's what happened." Shota was used to people talking about him. His appearance and demeanor weren't something people regarded as good. "Mike, we talked about this." "They weren't just talking about you, Shota. Now, that was a problem." Mike sounded very apprehensive about saying that. "They were talking about you and Izuku." Shota knew exactly what Mike was implying now. Some of the other staff must have been talking about him clinging to the idea of bringing the kid back. Everyone on staff wanted him back, but no one knew how to actively try. Shota knew that he was the only one left genuinely thinking that the kid could be brought back. Not to mention everyone knew about how his mood was currently shit. The anniversary was coming up, and no one would bother him on that day. But this year he would be having that field try. A loud blaring alarm went off. "Security level 3 has been broken. All students please evacuate in an orderly fashion." Shota and Mike shot up from their seats and ran to look out the window. The intruders were the media. Cursing, Shota stepped out of the teacher's lounge with Mike following him. "We'll have to hold them off," he said as he ran to the doors. The crowd was now at the doors where Shota and Mike stood. "Give us all might." "He's in there, right?" the crowd shouted. "He's out today," Mike said back, then muttered to Shota, "This is illegal, villainous even. Can we blow them away already?" "Lay off it, mate. They'll write what they want anyway." "Let's wait for the cops," Shota said back. The press continued to argue to get a word about All Might. Shota and Mike couldn't see a green-haired kid slip into the school. When Kurojairi came into the room with bandages and a UA uniform after one of Shigaraki's visits, Izuku wanted to punch the misty BSTRD. He was going to have to get into UA, wasn't he? Why the hell would they make him do this after finding out he had some sort of connection to the school? Izuku carefully bandaged his disintegration wounds and took a look at the uniform. Izuku often had fantasized about wearing one of these uniforms, but maybe not in a situation like this. It was a long-sleeve, button-up white shirt, a gray jacket with blue-green stripes, dark blue-green breathes, and a red tie. He cringed at the tie. He really hated ties. He had no clue how to tie one, and then Dragon's whole formal wear thing didn't help either. The jacket had a noticeable difference from what Izuku always saw online. Instead of one epaulette, there were 2 on the shoulders. What does 2 epaulets means they're in general education, problem child. That's why my first-year photo has them. Problem child? Was that a nickname from the UA years? Izuku took off his outfit and put on the uniform. He left the jacket off, inspecting it. He flipped it inside out to reveal a black jacket instead of the gray one. He put the jacket on the gray side and stuck his pen in the pocket. Wow, he's wearing a UA uniform. Sure, it may have been, probably, stolen and he was using it to help villains and it was a general education one, not hero course, but it was still cool. Kurojairi returned with Shigaraki. Izuku tried to control his shaking as he flipped the jacket to the black side and clutched his pen in his pocket. Had he grown scared of Shigaraki? Absolutely. The man would disintegrate parts of Izuku's skin to try to get him to talk about UA for God's sake. Who wouldn't be scared of that? Not to mention, that was exactly what had happened a couple of minutes ago. "Okay, Deku," Shigaraki said, "you're going to go into UA and find whatever you can about the heroic schedule. You're also going to take whatever else you find necessary." "And if I don't?" Izuku hissed. Shigaraki leaned closer and put 4 fingers on Izuku's shoulder, the 5th scarily close. "Well, we wouldn't want some of those heroes to die, now would we?" Shigaraki gripped Izuku's shoulder harder. "We villains shouldn't let our hard work go to waste." "We villains?" "Because that's what he is." A villain that considers certain heroes his family. But he was a villain willing to die for those heroes, though. Fine. When I tell you to go get the information, you'll go and do that. Kurogyri, warp us to the gates. The warp opened and Shigaraki walked in, with Izuku following him. They were just outside the gates. A giant crowd of the press surrounded the gates as kids walked in. They must have heard of All Might being a teacher as well. Izuku looked at Shigaraki, the man's face spread out into a sadistic grin. Izuku turned his attention to whoever the press was talking to. One student was a short girl with brown eyes and hair. He looked at her shoulders, hero course. She raised her arms as she talked about All Might. There was another student, a tall boy, with short dark blue hair with a very pointed face and glasses. He was also a hero course student. Then, Izuku's eye caught onto familiar blonde hair. Kaken pushed past a reporter. The exact same reporter then stuck his microphone in the face of a scruffy man with black hair. Eraserhead. Eraserhead shoos away the reporter and starts walking off when the UA barrier goes off. The reporters argued and complained about the barrier. Shigaraki started walking towards the gate. The two kept walking until they were at the wall. Shigaraki placed his hand on the wall and it disintegrated away. The crowd of press stared in shock as the gate was now gone. Not missing their chance, they immediately stormed into the school. Izuku looked at Shigaraki as the man gestured for Izuku to walk in. Shouldn't have been so easy to walk close to the school, flip his jacket, and walk in. While making his way to the closest heroics class, 1A, he saw 3 kids running down the basically abandoned hallway. They had just run out of the class labeled 1C. The 3 kids, 2 girls and 1 guy, ran into him. One of the girls fell on her back, the other one tried to help the other girl, and the guy profusely apologized. Izuku told him it was okay. "God damn it, Keiko," the girl trying to help the other yelled, "You and your effing quirk?" The girl yelling had long pink hair that went down to her waist. The girl on the floor looked exactly like her but with shoulder-length hair. Twins. "Oh, I'm so sorry, Maru," floor girl yelled. "So sorry that you're the one who got us into this effing mess." "Yasumi," the boy yelled. Both of the girls yelled, "What? You ran into some random kid and now you're yelling to each other. Get your sheet together." "It's Keiko's fault," the long-haired Yasumi yelled. "Her and her iron shoes keep getting us into these messes." "Well," the shorter-haired started, "we could have helped Shinso instead of Levi Dash. Do you need help getting up?" Izuku asked. "I doubt you can dash," the girl started before Izuku bent down and easily picked her up bridal style. "She's lighter than actual cement blocks." Izuku carefully placed the girl on her feet. "I have to go, see you around," he said quickly before walking off. He ignored the murmurs from the 3 kids and waited until he heard them leave. Izuku walked down the hallway until he got to the classroom the 3 students just left. Was that a person? He cursed his hero complex as he opened the door to the classroom. It was empty except for a general education student with messy indigo hair who was rapidly breathing and clutching at his chest. His white pupils blown wide and his tired-looking purple eyes looked distressed. Chest problems, rapid breathing, shaking, panic attack. Izuku could always tell what those looked like. He had quite a few after all. He slowly made his way into the view of the boy. He bit his lip as he tried to remember all he knew about helping a person going through a panic attack. "Hello," he said calmly. "Has this happened before? Do you want help?" The purple-haired boy nodded his head repeatedly. "Okay, what do you think is going to help?" The student opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. He kept opening and closing his mouth, probably trying to will words to come. "How about we try slowing your breathing so you can talk? Is that okay?" The boy nods. "Okay, follow my breathing." Izuku took a deep breath in and the boy repeated the action. Izuku let out the breath, then the action was repeated as well. For a solid 2 minutes, the 2 boys stood there matching their breathing. "Can you talk now?" Izuku asked. "Why yeah," the boy said. "I think I need to sit." The boy staggered towards a desk with Izuku following him. He pulled out a chair and sat down, continuing to breathe in and out. After a couple more minutes, the boy untensed. "Thanks," he said. "Are you going to be okay?" "Yeah, thanks to you." If Izuku wasn't conditioned to not show his emotions, he would have blushed. Not really. I have panic attacks too. All of that stuff was me using my memory and basic human decency to help. Sure. Basic human decency. Did you not see the 3 kids that sprinted out of the class? And you must recognize me. I'm pretty infamous in Gen Edition villainous quirk after all. Izuku scoffed. I'm not really one to care about how quirks are perceived. And I've met enough 6-sheet. I've met enough people to understand when someone is bad or not. I like you, Greenie. Greenie? Shigaraki. He really didn't want to get this guy involved, but he had to. What's your name, Purple? Shinso Hitoshi. You. I need you to do me a favor. It's really important. Can you give me your hand? Izuku took out his pen. This could work. He could send out a warning. Oh, sure. Shinso held out his hand. Izuku uncapped the pen and wrote on the palm of Shinso's hand. Keep an eye out for off-campus. Izuku recapped his pen as Shinso read the warning. What dash? Shinso started only for Izuku to interrupt him. I need you to tell Eraserhead that. Ask your teacher if you can talk to him privately. My teacher hates me. She'll say no. That's what you say when given a warning of a villain attack? Tell her that the message is from Student Zero and she'll let you talk to him. Student Zero? For the first time in 5 years, Izuku purposefully showed a person his zero, Midoriya Izuku. Quirkless. Student Zero. Any of those things will make the teacher let you talk to Eraserhead. Just get that message to him. Izuku then sprinted out of the classroom and made his way to 1A. He looked in the teacher's desk and found all sorts of important information. Studies on the class's quirks, lesson plans, a picture of a small child with green hair. Answer she. Wait, what was that last one? Izuku took another look at the picture. It was of a child around 9 years old. Curly green hair, bright green eyes, and a scattering of freckles immediately were recognizable to Izuku. This was him. This happy child was him. He was smiling wide, holding up Eraserhead's capture scarf on his neck. Izuku looked closer at the picture and noticed tear marks staining some parts of it. This desk was Eraserhead's. Izuku put the picture back and grabbed a copy of the lesson plans. Shigaraki would have probably wanted him to take the other papers, but Izuku was in a rebellious mood. He could just try to lie his way out of the situation later. Izuku quickly made his way back out of the building, flipping his jacket, and to Shigaraki. Did you get it, Deku? Shigaraki asked as soon as he and Izuku were far enough away from UA. Izuku handed over the lesson plans. This was all I could find. Please believe it. Please believe it. Please believe it. All right, Deku. Yes, Kurogiri is going to warp us back now. The warp gate opened, and Izuku walked in with Shigaraki. As he looked at the hideout bar, he prayed Shinso had followed his instructions. Hitoshi wasn't expecting to have a panic attack because of the alarm going off when 3 kids were calling him a villain. He also wasn't expecting a green-haired Gen Ed student to come in and help him. He really wasn't expecting the kid to not know who Hitoshi was and say he wasn't concerned about Hitoshi's quirk. He was completely blindsided when the kid wrote some sort of warning on his hand, told him to tell a very specific teacher it, reveal that the kid had some sort of disappearing tattoo on his neck, and then tell Hitoshi that his names and his lack of quirk would make the teacher let Hitoshi talk to Eraserhead. Which led to now, where Hitoshi was gathered with the rest of the class. He was, not so subtly, glaring daggers at the Yasumi twins and Kashiwa. Once Sensei, an underground hero named Moonlit, had taken attendance, she dismissed 1C to go home. Once everyone left the classroom, Hitoshi walked up to her. Sensei, he said, I need to talk to Eraserhead. Moonlit stopped writing and looked up. No. Why do you need to talk to him? Here goes nothing. I have a message from Student Zero. Moonlit's eyes went wide and she stood up. How the hell do you know that name? Midoriya Izuku. Quirkless. Student Zero. He gave me a message for Eraserhead. His teacher stood there with her mouth wide. I'll take you to him. Thank you. The whole debacle with the gate was frustrating Shota. He had just gotten back to his class from Nedzu talking about the possibility of villains. He was currently working on writing down the duties of a class president. Momo had given up her chance to be class president to Ida. The class chanting of "exits and Ida" was annoying, and he couldn't wait for this day to pass. Shota took a chug of his coffee and looked at the date. In 4 days he'd have the USJ trip, but in 4 days the anniversary would also happen. He really was dreading the next 4 days. Not to mention having to deal with the resulting media outbreak from the media breaking in. Shota grabbed the stack of essays and a red pen. He might as well distract himself. As Shota started grading Aoyama's essay, a knock came from the classroom door. "Who's bothering him now?" "Yes?" he asked, annoyed. In walked Moonlit, 1 CS homeroom teacher and number 117, and Shota wanted to groan. He had worked with Moonlit, and she wasn't a good person to talk to. She was quirkist, to say the least. She saw her quirk, the ability to manipulate moonlight, as powerful, and anyone without a powerful quirk wasn't important to her. This became a problem when she was told about his problem child being quirkless. She tried hiding her prejudice, not very well, and kept her mouth shut around the staff that liked or knew Izuku. Why Nedza kept her around, Shota had no clue. And since she considered Shota's quirk to be weak, she didn't like him either. "What do you want, Moonlit?" he asked. "I'm kinda busy and you know not to bother me days before dash." Shota's eyes caught onto a student. Gez, the kid was a mess. He was a general education student with a mess of indigo hair that stood straight up and purple eyes with eye bags that could match his own. "This is my student," Moonlit said as the kid stepped into the classroom. "Shinso Hitoshi. A certain quirkless green-haired kid gave me a warning for you," Shinso said, holding up his palm to show writing. Shota's eyes went wide and his hand went to his mouth. Izuku was in the building. He was in the building long enough to send out a warning on the palm of a student's hand. Meaning that this kid was the first non-villain Izuku interacted with for longer than a minute. Shota took his hand off his mouth and hid his shock. "Shinso, was it?" Shota said. "So, you somehow met a person that many powerful people have kept secret for years and is kidnapped by villains. Follow me." Shota walked off, Shinso following him. The pair walked until they got to a room near the teacher's lounge. Shota opened the door. The room was the basic size of a classroom, with couches and coffee tables instead of desks. If you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't see the soundproofing done in the room or the lock that only opened to staff. As heroes, sometimes they needed a place to talk about important topics without interruption. Shota moved into the room and sat on a couch, gesturing for Shinso to sit across from him on the other couch. The student sat. "Now, kid," Shota said, "how the hell did you meet a kid that's been missing for 5 years?" Shinso fiddled with his hands. "It was during lunch. I was in 1C, talking to 3 of my classmates. The alarm went off and my classmates ran out of the classroom. I had a panic attack instead of leaving. I stayed alone in the classroom for about 6 minutes when Midoriya walked in. He was wearing a Gen Ed uniform and I saw bandages on his forearms underneath his jacket. He came up to me and helped me out of my panic attack. I thanked him and he told me that he also has panic attacks." "That's new. Izuku didn't have panic attacks when he was at UA. How did he react when you said thank you?" "He was sort of flat. He didn't stutter or show a lot of emotion when I talked to him." "What happened to you, Izuku?" "He asked for my name and when I told him he asked for my hand. When I gave it, he wrote down the message. He told me to tell you what was on it privately. He also said that if I said it was from Student Zero, my teacher would let me talk to you. He showed me some sort of tattoo on his neck of a zero, told me his name and how he was quirkless, and then left." "Let me see the warning." Shinso stuck out his palm, and Shota read the warning. "Keep an eye out for off-campus." So, whoever Izuku was with was going to attack the next time a class is off-campus. But wasn't the next classroom out his class? Shinso took back his hand as Shota reached for a paper and pencil. Shota quickly wrote down the warning and the important parts of the recount. He looked back at the kid. "I'm gonna have to ask you to recount this to a police officer. You're also not allowed to tell anyone about meeting Izuku. Everyone in the UA staff has been trying to find him for half a decade and you are the only person who he's talked to for more than a minute that isn't a villain. But I guess you're supposed to know more about him if you're in on the secret as well." Shota stopped writing and sat up. Izuku's mom died in a villain attack by dragon that killed 250 people. He was the only survivor. I was the one who found him completely okay from the quirk of the store's cashier. Sometime during when he was in the hospital, he had met Nedzu and the BSRD had decided to make the kid a ward of UA for witness protection. When the kid was with us, every one of the teachers grew to love him. He had an amazing attitude and great amounts of potential to become a hero. But there was the looming idea that he'd be kidnapped by Dragon and taken to be a part of Dragon's horde. See, Izuku is Dragon's son. So, the kid decided to make the number system of UA. Shota held up his wrist, letting the 5 appear. To Shinso, the staff all has numbers written on their bodies now. Izuku had created some kind of ink that did exactly what he wanted with seemingly no side effects. We still don't know what's in the stuff because we couldn't ask him. He had gotten through numbering 1 to 5 when he was kidnapped. The numbers are mainly to make sure Izuku is okay, but something happened and he only just ended up using one of the features a month or so ago. Izuku can pinch his 0 to tell every number that he's in trouble or whatever is decided to be the message it sends. So if the staff says it means, "I'm here, come get me," then that's what it means when a staff member tells him to pinch his neck. Another feature is that whenever a number and Izuku make eye contact and the number is searching for Izuku, the numbers burn slightly. But with what you've given us, we can bring him back home. Thank you. You can head home now. Shinso, looking slightly dazed, left the room. Shota leans back into the couch and puts his hands over his face. So, how the hell is this supposed to work? Make sure 1A doesn't get harmed whilst also making the villains stay long enough to grab Izuku. Also, there's sprouts an ironic part of this whole thing. So the 5th anniversary of the kidnapping is the day we get him back. A day after the UA break-in, Izuku figured out where exactly the League was going to hit. It was going to be the USJ in 3 days. 3 days and a group of untrained children are going to be fighting villains while their teachers do the same. Sure, they would be heroes in training, but they're still kids around Izuku's age. Hopefully, Shinso got the warning out to erase her head. As Izuku is eavesdropping on Shigaraki and Kurogiri's conversation, he overhears some very important information and takes out his pen to write on himself. The doctor has finished the Nomu, correct? Kurogiri asked. Yeah, the old man has, Shigaraki responded. It's going to be a great final boss for All Might. Shock absorption and regeneration. Sensei will be pleased when All Might falls. As Izuku writes down the Nomu's quirks, he also writes about the doctor and Sensei. 2 days after the UA break-in and Izuku woke up by a roar. After having a panic attack about Dragon. Was all of that a dream? Did Dragon find him? Was all of that work to help heroes not real? Izuku looked around and realized that he wasn't in the room the League normally held him in. This room looks more like an examination room. Izuku got up and booked it to the door, not noticing it was unlocked, and opened it. He slammed the door behind him and took in his new surroundings. He was still in a building, but it wasn't the bar from the League. It looked like a warehouse with boxes and bags filling the area. Oil drums and pipes were spread around the area as well. But the most disturbing part was the large metal tanks that only had heads sticking out. No, not heads. Brains. The part sticking out of the tanks was brains. Izuku shrunk back and ran into something. Or someone. He looked back to see a short, balding man with goggles, a thick mustache, and clothes like a doctor. Was this the doctor? Where am I? Izuku snapped, turning to glare at the doctor. I think the question we should be asking is, how are you alive? The doctor asked. Normal people's bodies don't refuse a quirk all for one gives them. How did your Suzuku? Shivers ran up Izuku's body as the doctor said that. Given a quirk? What kind of science or quirk does that? Not to mention how his body refused it? Secondly, why did this doctor look so familiar? Then, a thought struck Izuku. Weren't you that doctor that diagnosed me as quirkless? Yeah. Diagnosed, like it was some kind of disease or illness. Yes. Now, I'd love to see how exactly you work. How exactly does your body refuse quirks? A manic grin spread across the doctor's face. But, old man, where the hell is Deku? I need him alive to be my bargaining chip. Was that Shigaraki? The doctor's smile fell into a strict expression. Fine. Take him back, But I want him when you're done. Shigaraki's crusty but face scowled, whatever. And so, that night Izuku added information on the doctor, all for one and Nomus. He doesn't write about his body rejecting quirks though. 3 days after the UA break-in and Izuku was getting tired of the constant noises coming from around the hideout. Yelling, stomping, and screams were coming from around the bar and Izuku was getting angry. Who the hell was making that much noise? Who exactly was the League hiring that made this much noise? Was the League gathering villains for the attack on the USJ tomorrow? Holy shit, that's tomorrow. That's definitely what this is for. So, Izuku started writing down the quirks and names of the voices he heard. He really wants to help the heroes with all of this. Then, the day the League planned to attack the USJ came. The only parts of Izuku's body not written on was the skin he showed. Shigaraki and Kurojairi came into Izuku's room. Ah! Shigaraki grinned as he saw Izuku. There's our little bargaining chip. He put 4 fingers around Izuku's neck. Kurojairi then opened a portal. Hopefully I can help the heroes. Today is the day. Today is the day Shota has been waiting 5 years for. Today, Shota would bring his kid back home. Midoriya Izuku was coming back to UA at almost any cost. The plan was simple. A good chunk of the UA staff would be surrounding the USJ, waiting for the pinch. 9 teachers, including Shota, 13, and All Might, would be inside the USJ itself. 1 pro hero, that specialized in the environment, would be stationed at each zone. Class 1A would be fine with 9 pros in the USJ. But Shota's and All Might's job is to get Izuku back and fight off any higher rank villains. The staff knew that Dragon's Horde had a large handful of A and B rank villains as well as the S rank dragon, so if Dragon got Izuku to another organization they'd have to have similar power. Right? Dragon wouldn't have handed Izuku to some weak group of villains. Right? Well, if the staff is overestimating the villains then it'd be fine. Izuku was coming home. Then, Shota walked into 1A and realized he forgot to inform a certain student about the predicament. Bakugo was Izuku's best friend and he had no idea of the plan to bring Shota's problem child back. Shota internally groaned as his class straightened up and stopped talking at the sight of him walking in. How had he forgotten to tell Bakugo? The kid had mellowed out substantially, but he was still the explosive brat that nicknamed Shota Hobo Teacher when he was 9. Not to mention this would bring up the inevitable conversation about Izuku that Shota was dreading having with the brat. Shota stood at the podium in front of his class. The 18 students waited for him to start talking. Might as well get this day started. For today's basic hero training, All Might, myself, and 1 other will be supervising, Shota stated. A soft murmur spread across the class as Zero raised his hand, leaning forward. What are we doing exactly? Zero asked. Shota held up a card, the word rescue in big letters written on it. You'll be preparing for disaster relief, from fire to floods. Shota winced as his class yelled out, "It's rescue training." Chatter filled the classroom. Rescue? Huh? This sounds like another rough day. This is what being a hero's all about. I'm pumped. I'll be right at home in a flood ribbit. Shota glared at his class. These kids were always so loud. I'm not done. The class quieted as Shota continued. It's up to you whether you wear your costumes or not. Some of them aren't suited for rescue. Shota pressed the button on the remote, the costumes coming out of the wall. The training site is a bit remote so we'll be going by bus. That's all. Get ready. As the class all grabbed their costumes, Shota noticed how the problem child frowned down at the case in his arms. The rest of the class filed out of the classroom, talking about the training, but Bakugo stayed in the class until everyone but Shota left. Bakugo, Shota said. The kid flinched and looked back at Shota. Are you going to get in costume or not? Yeah. Bakugo started walking towards the door, then stopped in the doorway. You tell me if there was a plan to get him back, right? Shota frowned. How's he supposed to tell the kid about the USJ? Bakugo knew Shota only because he was Izuku's best friend, so Shota didn't get to connect with the kid that much. The kid is probably hurting just as much as Shota. How was he supposed to explain that a plan to get Izuku back was happening today? I would. And that was the truth. Bakugo needed to know about the plan, Today during rescue training in the site. The class will be safe. Bakugu scoffed, I don't care about those extra dash. Bakugu shut his mouth, started talking again. I just want to know about how Izuku will be. Shota put his hand on Bakugu's shoulder. We'll get him back, kid. Bakugu shoved Shota's hand off his shoulder. You better. Then he walked out to the locker room. Why oh why was Shota's class so loud? Shota let out a long-suffering sigh as Ida blew a whistle. Gez, Tensei needed to teach that kid how to relax. Line up. According to your ID numbers, Ida shouted, fill those seats in an orderly fashion. When was the kid going to realize that it wasn't that kind of bus? When the entire class got on was the answer to that question. As Ida was sulking, Shota overheard his class having a conversation about quirks. My hardening isn't as cool as your guys' quirks, Kirishima said. I'm good in a fight but it's really boring. So, Kirishima needs some self-confidence. Noted. Ashido-kude, Kiri. Your quirk is more than enough to go pro. Pro! Aoyama exclaimed, don't forget that heroes also have to worry about popular appeal. My naval laser is both strong and cool. Perfect for a pro. Yeah, as long as you don't blow up your stomach, sweetie, Ashido said sickly sweet. You want to talk about strong and cool? That'd be Bakugu and Todoroki. Shota huffed out a quiet laugh. The problem child must have liked that. Well, yeah, Tsuyu said, but Bakugu is too unhinged to be popular. Oi! Bakugu said loudly, but not quite a yell. I'm not that bad anymore, Frogface. Anymore? We're here. Everyone off, Shota said as he made his way out of the bus. Looking at the outside of the USJ, Shota rubbed his number. Only a couple more hours and then Izuku will be back. In hours of fighting, Izuku will come home. The class made their way inside, in awe at the different zones. Whoa! Is this Universal Studios Japan? The attention of the students was then drawing to the hero in front of them. 13. There's the flood zone, the landslide zone, conflagration zone, etc., 13 said, every accident and disaster you can think of. I build this facility myself, and I call it the Unforeseen Simulation Joint. So it really is the USJ. As Uraraka gushed about 13 and the rest of the class started talking, Shota noticed the absence of the number one hero. What the F dash? Shota pulled 13 aside so that the students couldn't hear. Where the hell is All Might? I thought he was supposed to meet us here. He got caught up in a large-scale attack by 4 of the higher-rank Horde members. Reached his limit. We're on our own for this. Shota cursed the blonde idiot. The fallout of Dragon being arrested was big. Horde members were fighting heroes and trying to break Dragon out constantly. Lower-ranked members of the Horde would come out in large groups some days. Other days, the higher-rank members would come out and so many heroes were needed to help at those times. But for the villains to be so strong as a unit to wear out All Might. Senpai, 13 was talking again, we'll get Izuku back with or without All Might. Plus Ultra. 13 turned back to the class, who quickly shut up. Before we get started, I have 1 or 2 points. 13 held up their fingers, or 3, or 4. 13 let loose their quirk from their finger. As I'm sure many of you are aware, my quirk is called Black Hole. It can SCK in and tear apart anything. I use it to save people in all sorts of disasters. 13 turned off their quirk, shutting the finger cap of their suit. However, my power can easily kill. I have no doubt some of you have similar abilities. In our superpowered society, the use of quirks is heavily restricted and monitored. Our system seems to be a stable one, but never forget that one wrong move with an uncontrollable quirk and people will die. In this class, you will be shown a different perspective than in the fitness test or battle training. You will learn how to utilize your quirks to save lives. Your powers aren't meant to harm. I hope you learn that you're meant to help people as heroes. 13 bowed with their right arm underneath their chest. That is all. I thank you for listening. Talking spread through 1A, and Ida was clapping. Great, Shota said. Now we can start. First off. Then, Shota's eye caught onto a black and purple swirl in front of the fountain of the USJ. He quickly grabbed onto his goggles and put them over his eyes. Huddle up and don't move. Shota yelled. 13, protect the students. A hand came out of the swirl, which had now widened to a circle. Then, a face with a hand covering it peered through. Yellow diamonds, which looked like eyes, appeared at the top of the black and purple as groups of villains surged out of it. What the heck is that? Don't move. Those are villains. Shota yelled. 13 and Eraserhead, is it? The mist said calmly. According to the staff schedule we received the other day, All Might is supposed to be here. Of course, the break-in was this scum's doing. Where is he? The villain with hands all over his body said. We've come all this way. And brought so many playmates. Not to mention our bargaining chip. Just for the symbol of peace, not to be here. I wonder if some dead kids will bring him here? As Shota leapt off the railing to fight, he noticed the lack of any green-haired kids in the group. So Izuku was somewhere else. Izuku is on a boat. Kurogyri had opened a portal leading to the boat and Shigaraki had shoved him through saying something under the lines of, "We can use Deku later." So now Izuku is on a boat. He could feel the sway of it on the water and he could smell the water itself, but he had no clue where exactly he was. He might be somewhere in the USJ, he might be floating in a random boat on the ocean. Who knows? But it's dark and cold and Izuku wouldn't be able to find a way out if he tried. He got the sense that the room he was sitting in was big, so trying to find where an exit was would be dangerous if weapons were somewhere in here. His best bet was to try to hear some sort of noise and follow it. So that was exactly what he did when he heard a soft thump on the ground of the boat, followed by a louder thump. Izuku crouched down. He put one hand on the floor and his other in front of him. He slowly made his way around to the area he thought he heard the sound from. His hands ran into a wall. Izuku felt around the wall, searching for a light switch or door. His right hand wrapped around a knob. A doorknob to be specific. Izuku held his breath as he turned the handle. The door creaked open and bright light shone onto Izuku's eyes. When was the last time he had seen the sun? Izuku squinted and then his eyes went wide. There, standing on the deck of the cruise ship was a hero and what looked like a hero in training. He immediately recognized the hero as Waterwalk, a hero who could control water underneath his feet. Waterwalk uses his quirk to fight villains in flood and ocean scenarios, but he's also a teacher at UA. He has the number 105 written on his left ankle, if Izuku's memory is correct. The white-haired man was talking to the frog-like hero in training. Izuku took a look at the frog girl. Hopefully, she wouldn't be too traumatized by this experience. First-year students weren't supposed to be fighting villains a week into the school year. But Izuku was getting distracted. He ran forward, mouth open to scream that he was there. Only for a portal to open in front of him and he tumbled onto dirt. Then, a hand is placed over his throat. Not again. 23 seconds. So you're the boss? Shota says as he flings his capture weapon forward, only for the hand villain to grab it. 24 seconds. 20 seconds. Shota dashes towards the villain. 17 seconds. Shoyuta yanks his scarf and slams into the villain. It's hard to tell when you're scampering around, but the villain says, there are moments when your hair falls. As he talks, the grip on Shota's elbow tightens. Every time you finish a given move, your max duration gets shorter and shorter. The grip on Shota's elbow tightens more, and then white-hot pain spreads through his arm. He sees the skin on his elbow disintegrate away. Don't overdo it now, Eraserhead. Shota punches the boss across the face and lands on the ground. The villain continues talking. Your quirk isn't good in long group battles, huh? You don't specialize in these types of fights, yet you jumped right in. Hoping to make the kids feel safe? The villain chuckles creepily. So cool. So very cool. By the way, hero, I'm not the boss here. Shota's eye catches onto a creature behind him. A large, black, muesli creature with a wide mouth reaches out to grab Shota. The creature grabs his right arm and snaps it, then pins him to the ground as it roars. The hand villain is still talking. Meet the anti-symbol of peace, the bioengineered Nomu. What the F dash? This creature snapped Shota's arm like a twig. Looking at any part of its body should be enough to nullify any quirk, so this was its base strength. Easily as strong as All Might. This, Nomu, was made specifically to kill All Might, wasn't it? Shota's eyes spot another black and purple swirl appear, talking this time, Shigaraki Tamura. Kurogyri. Is 13 dead? The hand villain, Shigaraki, asks. 13 is incapacitated, but I couldn't warp away some of the students and one of them escaped. The mist, Kurogyri, responded. Shigaraki clawed at his neck. Kurogyri, if you weren't our ticket out of here I'd turn you to dust. We're leaving, game over. Then, a portal opened right next to Shiraki, but how about we leave a dead kid for the heroes to find? Then a short, malnourished green-haired teen tumbled onto the dirt and Shigaraki wrapped his hand around the teen's throat. Izuku! Izuku! That wasn't Shigaraki's voice. The grip around his neck was there, but that wasn't Shigaraki speaking. Izuku's eyes were screwed shut, but he wanted to open them now. That voice was the same voice in Izuku's head. The same voice that affectionately called him problem child. The same gravelly, gruff, sleep-deprived voice that would tell Izuku that he wasn't dragon. The voice that made Izuku despise his villainy even more. He hated how he couldn't remember the speaker. That he couldn't put a name or face to the voice. Who was it? He wanted to know. But Izuku refused to open his eyes. The only reason he was at the USJ was to be a hostage. Hostages die all of the time. This is when Shigaraki kills him, isn't it? That's not a question. Izuku is going to die. He was going to die, but he refuses to have his eyes open when he does. Maybe it's some kind of no satisfaction to the killer thing? Don't let them see the light fade from your eyes as they kill you. Don't let them see how much it hurts. He just needs to keep his eyes shut and accept it. Open your eyes, Deku. There's Shigaraki. Izuku wonders what it'll be like to die. Would it be the whole light at the end of the tunnel thing? Would he see his mom? What if reincarnation was real? Maybe he could actually be someone useful in his next life. But wasn't he going to stay alive for his family? The grip on Izuku's throat tightened until he was choking. Guess he won't get to see Yuha? Izuku was going to stay alive to tell people he was alive. Right? He was going to be alive for peaceful moments with his Zero. He needed his family to know he was alive. A fifth finger went down onto Izuku's neck. But no pain came. Izuku's mind was racing. What quirks could stop this? He ran through all the quirks of the UA staff he could think of. There wasn't any quirk that he could think of. So who? It suddenly struck Izuku. Eraser head. Aizawa Shota. He could erase quirks through his eyes. Izuku slowly opened his own eyes. Taking in his surroundings, he saw that he was in some sort of plaza. A flooded area, he was probably there, was close by. In fact, all of the different zones of the USJ were close by. You really are pretty cool, Shigaraki was talking again. The other feature I made was that if you make eye contact with me while searching for me, there's a slight B-burn. Izuku said enthusiastically to the UA staff. The conference room wasn't as intimidating after his, 50th time in it. The number system was finished. Sure, it wasn't perfect for situations where he loses his memory or when there's absolutely no sign of him, but it was still his pride and joy. Not to mention it would be fun to see his family get jealous over number placement. But functionality always came before his own feelings. He would have loved to make show number 1, but Netsu just seemed to be the most logical. So, show would have to settle with 5. It's mainly a F feature if I'm made to wear a mask so you'd know who I am. It's amazing, problem child. Izuku blushed at Show's praise. You're such a dad, Aizawa. There's Kiyama with her dad comments. You forgot them in front of problem child dashed. Show's capture weapon was then around her mouth, shutting her up. Erase her head. Izuku saw red eyes through gold goggles, and his Zero burned. He didn't recognize the person that found him. The person was a man with black hair that stood on end, yellow goggles on his eyes, and baggy black clothes. He also wore what looked like an off-shite scarf around his neck. Izuku really couldn't tell if he was a hero or not. He was really scary looking, so he quickly scooted back. The man seemed to notice him and seemed to relax. The man's hair fell to his shoulders and he took off his goggles to show black eyes. Hey kid, the man said. His voice was really gruff and sounded like he was sleep-deprived. Are you hurt at all? Izuku shook his head. Hero, he asked shakily. The man nodded his head. Yeah, I'm a hero. Can you come over here? The woman that they were talking about was my mom, Izuku forced out. He was growing really tired of talking. Can I sleep, hero? It's Eraserhead, and yes, you can sleep. The hero sat with Izuku as he curled into a ball. You were really brave, kid. A real hero. Nada, hero that can't be that thanks. Izuku drifted off to sleep. Izuku didn't want to be in this hospital. Everything about it unsettled him. He really doesn't like hospitals now. The smell of the chemicals hurt his nose. But a lot of people had come in to ask about what happened. He didn't want to talk to any of them. One of them tried giving him cookies if he spoke. Didn't work. Another tried to just talk and try to get him to open up. That didn't work either. Another, Nedzu, had tried to exchange information for information, but Izuku didn't want to know anything. It was the closest though. A man, probably a detective, was coming in with the person each time. He just wanted his mom. Or maybe All Might. Or the hero that saved him. Izuku decided to mess with the sheets of the bed. He wasn't really hurt, and he didn't need the room, so why was he here? Wouldn't he be taken in by someone? Izuku knew that a new person was coming with the detective today. They always had a schedule. He really didn't want to talk to anyone today. But then the hero that saved him, Eraserhead, walked in. Izuku waved at the hero. Hey, Midoriya, Eraserhead said, taking a chair while the detective stood next to him. Would you mind telling us about the mall attack? Izuku's shoulders slumped and he curled up into a ball. This was Eraserhead. Eraserhead helped him. He could at least speak to him. So he answered with a whisper, yes. Izuku still didn't like the hospital, but he was told that he was in danger. If he could avoid being a burden by staying, then he'd stay. The only thing he liked when he was in the hospital was when Eraserhead would stop by. He was going to be a ward of UA, and so now he got more freedoms when it was known where he was staying. He had gotten another notebook for analysis. And now, how this happened Izuku didn't know. Eraserhead was reading through his analysis. Kid, Eraserhead said as he looked up from the notebook, this can be really dangerous if it fell into the wrong hands. What? Izuku's analysis wasn't that good. You need to start writing in code. Eraserhead gave back the notebook, but your advice isn't half bad. Izuku's eyes were then drawn to the advice section. Was the whole voice recorders would be good to hold onto for information gathering a good idea? Shopping for clothes wasn't fun. Izuku had grown like a weed and now he was too big for his clothes. And it was right after he had moved into UA2. So now Eraserhead and Izuku were going to get new clothes. At a mall. Right before they headed out, Eraserhead told Izuku something. While we're out in public, you use my name. It's Aizawa Shota. So, call me Aizawa. And if you start feeling bad, tell me. Not Eraserhead. Aizawa. What was that about feeling bad? As Izuku followed Aizawa through the mall, he was having a hard time breathing. He just couldn't seem to get enough air into his lungs. His head was spinning and his heartbeat was speeding up. He could feel himself losing focus, but he couldn't close his eyes. Every loud sound reminded him of an explosion. Thoughts of the mall. And the explosions. And the cashier. And his mom's dead corpse in the arms of the ram villain. The hissing and smoke from the register. Midoriya. Aizawa? Kid, whatever you're seeing isn't real. You're not there. Can you look around and tell me what you see? Izuku does. BB bright lights. White. Sea cloth clothes. Keep going, kid. As Aizawa and Izuku looked at the different online stores, Izuku noticed one more item in the cart. Wasn't there 20 F4 items? And not 25? Izuku asked. Aizawa grunted and hovered over the cart, showing a voice recorder. Izuku was now trying not to cry. Izuku was 100% holding back on how much he wanted hero merch. As he hung up a new poster, he muttered to himself. I wish there was Eraserhead merch. Izuku wasn't feeling well. He wasn't sick or anything. The small area he was given was fully explored, so he tried watching TV. It turned on to a news channel and it was reporting on quirkless discrimination. So Izuku immediately turned off the TV and went to his room. He had gotten so caught up in the hype about UA that he forgot about his dream. Izuku would need someone to train him. But who? He wasn't expecting Aizawa to show up to take him to meet the UA staff. But Izuku wasn't in the mood anymore. "What happened, kid?" Aizawa asked, and don't say nothing, your attitude did a 180. "I was just thinking about being a hero," Izuku responded. I was thinking about how I should train for it." "You're gonna need a lot of training for people to take you seriously." Izuku then had an idea. "Why you fight Quirkless a lot of times? Could you Coldio Tremedobiro?" Izuku knew that the last part was rushed out, but Aizawa still seemed to understand. "It's going to be really hard to train to be a hero." "Are you sure?" Was he sure? "I'm sure." "Then okay, kid. As long as you understand it's going to be hell, I'll train you. Call me sensei." Izuku beamed. The world might just need a quirkless hero. Then Izuku cried. Izuku trailed behind Aizawa as 12 heroes sat on a long desk. "So, Netsu has probably told you about a ward. This is Midoriya Izuku. He's at large risk of kidnapping. We'll treat him well." Izuku bowed. Please take care of me." Why were the heroes whispering the word Dadzuwa? Izuku both liked and disliked training with sensei. He loved running and jumping and working harder to further himself. But he didn't like getting scolded by Recovery Girl whenever he got hurt, which was quite often. He also didn't like right after training when he had absolutely no brain to mouth filter. Normally he'd consider his words carefully when talking, unless he was rambling, but when he was tired he didn't do that. Everything he thought came out of his mouth. Meaning that it was pretty easy to get him to talk when he was like that. Which was the current situation. Sensei had just asked Izuku about the Bakugas, and now Izuku was talking about how cool Kaken's quirk was. Kaken's quirk is sometimes scary, but it's also really cool. Izuku said. "Kaken is the kid, right?" Sensei asked. "Why is his quirk so scary?" "Because it's loud and hurts." Izuku saw Sensei's eyebrows raise. "Did he use it on you?" Kaken used his quirk so much that it was a rarity someone didn't know what it felt like. "But he did mainly use it on me." "Do you know why?" Was Sensei concerned? Well, Izuku really was too exhausted to bend the truth. He said it was because I'm quirkless. Izuku didn't miss the grunt, but kept talking. "But Kaken is so angry all the time that he lashes out at anyone around him. I was just always the closest person. He may need some form of anger management now that I think about it." Izuku was coming out of the locker rooms when he caught a glimpse of his face. He had seen pictures of Hisashi now, and Izuku didn't really like it. He looked so much like the villain. He had the same mess of wild hair like his father, it's just that his hair was green and not black. The same wide green eyes. The freckles also came from his father, sadly. He used to really like his freckles, but now he kinda wanted to hide them. Sensei must have noticed something was wrong. How the hero does that Izuku doesn't know, because the man asked what was wrong. "I don't like my face." Sensei's wide eyes made Izuku look to the floor. He felt stupid for saying that now. He was 9 and he didn't like how he looked. "Why, Midoriya?" Sensei asked. Yup, the man was definitely concerned about Izuku now. "I look too much like Dragon." Sensei bent down to Izuku's height. "Can you look at me, Midoriya?" Izuku did. "It doesn't matter if you look like him, Izuku. It matters that you him," Sensei said firmly, leaving no room for arguments, "and you never will be." Izuku burst into tears and hugged the hero. He was fine with the given name use. Izuku had somehow broken his arm while running. That's right, while running. As Izuku showed Sensei the cast. The man face-bombed. "You're a problem child, Midoriya." Izuku was bored. Like really bored. So what's Izuku's plan? Bother Aizawa. Izuku ran through the empty hall of UA until he reaches the teacher's lounge, where he opens the door to see Aizawa making coffee. "Problem child," Aizawa said, "what are you up to?" This was harder than it should be. "Can I wear your capture scarf?" Aizawa blinked. "You want to?" "What?" "I want to wear your scarf." Aizawa let out a sigh that made Izuku perk up. That was a finiv sigh. Aizawa carefully took off his scarf and placed it around Izuku's neck. It was really warm. But Izuku had a plan. He held out his phone, blushing furiously and averting his eyes. "See, could you take a picture?" Aizawa had a confused face and then took the phone. Izuku sunk into the scarf's warmth and held it up, smiling wide. "Are you satisfied, problem child?" Aizawa asked. "May I have my scarf back now?" Izuku let Aizawa take off the scarf. "It's nice, thanks." Aizawa ruffled Izuku's hair. "Whatever, kid." Izuku's 10th birthday was already so much fun. Kaken got a visitor's pass to come in and celebrate too. Everyone had cake, and Izuku got to blow out candles. Then came the presents. Izuku got a lot of hero merch, mostly the hero's own, and a ton of analysis and support books. Then, Aizawa passed a rectangular box. "Here, kid." Izuku smiled wide when he took it and carefully unwrapped it as he had done with the other gifts. Izuku took the lid off the box. In it was a black hoodie with off-white drawstrings, and a bunch of off-white bands on the shoulders, that turned into an off-white fabric halfway up the oversized hood. The other half of the hood was black, with a gold band and 2 golden rectangles with slits where they cover the eyes. Was this what Izuku thought it was? Izuku looked at the man who had just given him the gift, looking as stoic as ever. No one was making noise as Izuku put on the hoodie, revealing that, yes, this was Eraserhead merch. And yes, Eraserhead had custom-made merch of himself for Izuku to have on his birthday. Izuku ran towards the man and tackled him in a hug. "Thank you," Izuku said. Aizawa chuckled. "Sure thing, problem child." Aizawa and Izuku were on their way to the development studio when Izuku's mind began to wander. Then, Izuku decided to ask, "Why does Mike call you Sho?" Izuku asked, then regretted it when he saw the sad frown on Aizawa's face. "Hisashi and I used to have a friend who called me Sho," Aizawa said, voice filled with sorrow. "When he left, I missed being called Sho. So Hisashi started calling me it. It stopped being a name I associated with my friend and more, just what those closest call me." After a couple of seconds of silence, Aizawa spoke up again. "If you're going to ask me if you can call me Sho, the answer is yes." Izuku looked up to the man and smiled warmly. "Then I'm Izuku to you." The number system was going to be awesome. Izuku really just needs to finish this part and he'll go eat. Promise. Apparently Sho wasn't convinced. "Problem child," Sho said as he entered the room, "you need to eat. You're almost as bad as the actual support students." "Later," Izuku said. "I promise I'll eat later." Sho placed a bento box in front of Izuku's workstation. "Eat. Now." Izuku rolled his eyes and made his way to the sink. "Okay, Sho. I'll eat. You're going to get ink poisoning if you keep working like this." Maybe. Izuku grabbed the food. Later that night, Izuku was still working on the number system. Sho opened the door, took one look at Izuku and sighed. "Izuku," the hero said, "why the hell are you up at 3 in the morning?" "Working," Izuku said. "Also, you're a hypocrite." "Problem child?" "Fine." Izuku stood up. "Fine. I'll go sleep, you hypocritical hobo teacher." Izuku was tired of crying. He'd spent so long crying that some of the staff was genuinely concerned that he'd get dehydrated. Sho was hurt, life-threateningly hurt, because villains had tried kidnapping Izuku. Izuku knew it wasn't his fault. Sho's job is to protect, especially him with Izuku being a ward and Sho's student. But Izuku still felt so guilty. Sho could die and it would have been protecting Izuku. Izuku didn't get much sleep that night. Or any other nights where Sho was close to death. Izuku sat on a chair next to Sho's hospital bed. That villain had tried to kill Sho. But what if they had tried to kill Izuku? It was selfish to think of himself at a time like this, but Izuku couldn't help it. What if they succeeded in kidnapping him and ended up killing him? What if Izuku was a hostage or an example or a gift? How would he? "Heroes die all the time," Izuku said, to nothing in particular, but Sho was now listening. "I know that. But so do hostages and people that are kidnapped." "Sho." Izuku looked at the bedridden hero. "What if a villain tries to kill me? What do I do?" This man is Sho. He's Izuku's family. But Izuku can still feel the threat around his neck. "What do you do?" Sho clarifies. Izuku has extremely sharp teeth. And Izuku has a strong jaw. Shigaraki has a 5-point contact quirk. Well, Izuku, when someone tries to kill you, you wait for an opportunity. Izuku opens his mouth wide, lowering his head. You use your analysis and go for their weakness. And bites. And then strike as hard as you can. It took Izuku a second to realize what he had just done. The blood in his mouth really helped bring him back to reality. Holy shit, I just did that. Welp, nothing he can do now but go through with it. So he bit harder. And then, crunch. Holy shit, that's a finger in my mouth. Nom dash. Shigaraki yelled. Nope. Hell no. Izuku spat out the finger. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. And then mustered all the pent-up anger from living with villains for 5 years and socked Shigaraki across the jaw. The man yelled profanities. Izuku looked back. The Nomo hadn't moved. Thank God, but Eraserhead Sho Aizawa-sensei hadn't moved either. The man was instead gesturing something. Izuku took a closer look and saw that he was making a pinching motion with his good arm. Pinch? Pinch. Izuku reached up to his neck and pinched his zero. Never fear. Was that All Might? Izuku looked back to the doors, which were now busted open. Nedzu, Hound Dog, Present Mike, Midnight, Snipe, Cementos, Power Loader, Blood King, Ectoplasm, and All Might all stood in the busted doorway. For we are here. The blue-haired boy that Izuku saw talking to the reporters stood with the heroes. President of Class 1A Tenya, the brother of Ingenium, apparently yelled, "Reporting for duty." Damn it. Shigaraki yelled, "We had more time. How the hell did they get here so fast?" Shigaraki then turned to Izuku, "Unless they knew." Izuku elected to ignore Shigaraki and instead yelled, "Hey heroes. Mind getting that big fucker off of Sensei? Kurogyri. Get us out of here." Shigaraki yelled as All Might grabbed Sensei and Izuku, placing them towards the entrance where 13 and students were being taken in by the arriving and the zone heroes. "Get back to the entrance with Aizawa," All Might said. "The two of you need to get out of here." Izuku threw Sensei over his shoulder. "Wait for a second." Surprisingly, All Might waited as Izuku ripped his long sleeve off and revealed the ink splayed across his skin. Izuku found the patch of skin he was looking for and read aloud. The Nomo has 2 quirks, shock absorption and regeneration. Izuku looked up to All Might. A head-on assault will be best since it's shock absorption, not negation. People want me back. Don't f this up. Die. Was that? As All Might ran to fight the Nomu, Izuku spotted a student with spiky blonde hair throw an explosion at Kurogyri's body. "You're not all that, misty motherfucker." "Kaken!" Izuku yelled, "Mind giving me some help with Sensei?" Izuku." Kaken stuttered, then steeled himself. "You better." 2 more students, one with red and white hair that Izuku recognized as Endeavor's son and another with spiky bright red hair, ran up. "Who are you?" the red spiky boy said. "You don't look old enough to be a hero." "Shut up." Kaken said. "Get Aizawa out of here with greeny, shitty hair." "Izuku, we're talking about this later." The blonde glared at Izuku with a slight softness. Red picked up Sensei's legs and Izuku and he started running to the entrance. "So, your name's Izuku, huh?" Red asked. "How dash?" "I'm probably legally not allowed to answer any of your questions," Izuku said flatly, "and don't bother Kaken about it either." "Kaken?" Red muttered. The sound of fists against each other drew the attention back to All Might and the Nomo. "A head-on assault," Izuku said, "so he actually listened to me." "Izuku." Izuku looked back to see Present Mike walking over, then running. "Izuku." "How the heck does dash?" Red started. "We need help getting Sensei over there. Help us. Please." Plus Ultra. The voice of All Might was heard throughout these as the Nomu shot out of the ceiling. Then shots rang out. Present Mike grabbed Sensei. "Okay, little listeners, Kirishima, you'll go with the rest of your class, and Izuku?" "Huh?" Izuku asked, already walking to the door. Mike took a wristwatch out of his pocket and threw it to Izuku. "Wear that. It's a tracker. Nedzu is going to want you in his sight at all times. And one more thing." "What is I dash?" Izuku felt himself getting picked up. "I can walk." Mike whispered into Izuku's ear. You've been missing for 5 years, kid. I doubt villains treated you well enough that you aren't hurt. I'm guessing that you have some sort of injury you won't talk about. Just don't hug me, I think Sensei would want to be the first to. Why yeah, I think he would. Shota woke up in a hospital bed. Or at least his eyes opened. He woke up to white over his eyes and a thick feeling over his entire body. A gasp sounded as he shuffled. Sho! Hizashi, I've already called a nurse. Classes have been cancelled for today. Do you remember anything? The Uche was attacked and, wait. His problem child, did we get Izuku? Hizashi chuckled, carried him to an ambulance in my arms with you over my shoulder. You two even got sent in the same ambulance. What? Well, when they asked if he was related to you he said, I think I'm his son or something. I don't really know. I have amnesia. All serious like. If it wasn't such a serious situation and the whole amnesia thing, then I would have laughed. The poor EMTs looked to me to ask if it was true and I told them yes so he could ride with you. You told medical professionals that Izuku was my son? The kid probably doesn't remember that much about me. No, he remembers a lot about you. I thought he said he had amnesia? It's most likely quirk amnesia. He said that certain situations brought back memories. Seeing you in person for the first time in 5 years brought back some memories of your interactions. Had him confused about if he was a ward of UA and also your adopted son or something. Shota could feel the heat rising to his face. He was slightly glad for the bandages, but he doubted it would fool Hizashi. I didn't act that fatherly. Did I? Sho, I can tell you're blushing. And also you did. You call Izuku your problem child now. And you're also going to be the first person to hug him. He told anyone who tried that he thinks you should be the first. I was adorable because he definitely wants you to be the first to hug him. Eraserhead, you're awake. A male nurse apparently walked in. So, your arms were smashed to splinters. You'll be able to use them again once the bandages come off. Your face was fractured but you don't have any brain damage. Your eye sockets were pulverized, can you see? The nurse bluntly said as he unwrapped the bandage around Shota's eyes. The nurse was strangely familiar. Yeah. For you. I recognize you. Ah, I was the head nurse on all of Midoriya Izuku's hospital injuries. Bano Yashiki. I treated him when he was brought to the hospital after the mall attack. I'm guessing that you would like to know his status? Yes. Hizashi and Shota said together. The nurse, Bano, took out a notepad from nowhere, quirk, and read off of it, well, Midoriya, let's start with the head. He himself says that he suffers from seemingly quirk-based memory loss. The effects of the quirk seem to be that certain interactions will cause memories to resurface. He says that he remembers an interaction with dragons soon after he was kidnapped, his kidnapping, certain features of his Zero, and certain memories of you, Eraserhead. He has slight hearing loss, but it's extremely mild. He has a concussion as well as bruising around his neck and a broken nose. Above the hips and before the neck was the worst. His shoulders and chest had lacerations of varying lengths and depths all across. He had quite a few broken or fractured ribs. He also had a broken collarbone. His arms were broken so many times throughout the years that any other person would have lost movement. Either the Horde had a very good nurse with possibly a healing quirk, or Midoriya is just abnormally resilient. It also could be both. His fingers specifically have deep lacerations and seem to have broken more than his arms. It won't impede his movement too much, but his hands will shake every so often and he might get spikes of pain where he can't move them. He will be getting physical therapy. His legs have also been broken repetitively. He actually had a gunshot wound, but he says that he took out the bullet himself. His ankles have also been broken so much that he'll get pain spikes. He would definitely fall when those occur, so make sure someone is there to catch him so he doesn't break anything else. He most likely fractured his kneecap at one point. The amount of shoddy healing on his body is atrocious. And while I'm on the subject of shoddy healing, a good amount of the broken bones weren't set properly and thus didn't heal correctly. Midoriya has had multiple surgeries to fix those. He has all types of burns all over his body. Water burns and burns directly from fire are most common. They never made it to 4th degree though. His back is actually the worst when it comes to the burns. He's also covered in really painful-looking bruises. And then there are the scars. There's a handprint scar on his left elbow. You'll actually be getting a similar scar on your right elbow, Eraserhead. There are similar scars, not in the shape of handprints, on his back and forearms. Then, there's all the information written on his body. He refused to let us wash it off until everything was written down and given to the police, so you won't have to worry about getting the information. His skin will be slightly gray though. Now, Bono made his clipboard vanish. He really wants to see you. Is that all right? It took a second for Shota's mind to catch up. His kid had gone through so much. Shota would finally get a chance to hug him. Please. Izuku was very nervous. He was going to truly see Sensei Sho? It sounds right. But Izuku doesn't really show after so many years. But Izuku felt kinda stupid for thinking the man had adopted him. Actually, he didn't really feel stupid because the man acted exactly how a father figure should act. Much better than Hisashi anyways. Who knows how many of his students call him Dad if he acts like that. So, Bono led Izuku to another hospital room and Izuku opened the door. Hisashi and Bono both left the room together. One to get his kid, and the other to give privacy. He'd finally see Izuku in a situation that wasn't life-threatening. His kid would finally be home. Then the door opened. Izuku looked horrible. The majority of his skin was tinted gray, with his face and hands the only semi-normal pale color. But the majority of his hands and arms were covered in white bandages with some pink spots. His neck was also covered in bandages. His curly hair was even more unruly than normal. But his eyes looked the worst. They were so dark. A dark green that surged in intellect and something else, trauma. The eyes of an experienced hero on a 15-year-old. Shota had only wanted to see those eyes years after Izuku had graduated. But he was seeing them now. Izuku. Sho. Then, those dark eyes filled with tears. They brightened, and Shota sadly smiled as he remembered the 10-year-old that would cry at almost anything. He could feel his own tears getting watery. No way in hell would he blame it on dry eye. Then, Izuku dashed forward and flung his arms around the hero. Shota patted the teen's back as tears sprung out of his own eyes. Welcome home, Izuku. Izuku let out a watery laugh. I'm home. Finally. Izuku was truly home. Sho, how the hell did you get them to let us out? Problem child, I don't even know. I don't think either of you should be out of the hospital. You can't go and teach, Sho. Izuku was so utterly confused and delighted. Sho had asked to talk to Bono and soon both Sho and Izuku were allowed to leave the hospital, with Mike telling them that they should have stayed. Only a couple hours back and this all was so familiar. Hisashi, have you met my class? Sho argued as Mike opened a car door for him. If I wasn't there to keep them on track, they would find some way to destroy something. Oh, and here's your pass, Izuku. Sho threw a card over to Izuku in the back seat. Izuku looked at the card. It looked the same as other UA passes Izuku had seen in passing. A big UA on the back and writing of his name on the front. Normally, underneath the name would be visitor, student, or staff, and a picture. But Izuku's pass didn't have that. A result of being in hiding, apparently. Your class sounds fun, Izuku joked as he got in. Can't wait to meet them. Mike let out a cough that kinda sounded like words. Sho grunted. What is it? Well, there's kinda a plan for you to meet them, Mike started but then was interrupted by Sho. The staff is planning for you to become a part of my class. Sho. Part of your class? You weren't supposed to tell him. Mike said as the car started moving, or be so blunt. He's not stupid, Hisashi, he would have figured it out with just what you gave him. I mean, why yeah, Izuku said, I was already thinking about that but I didn't think you'd actually have. But I'm Dash. It doesn't matter that you're quirkless, Izuku. Kid, you're not a villain. A second of silence, and then Sho started talking again. You're not a villain and you being quirkless doesn't matter. The car stopped at UA, but if you don't want to be a hero, no one will make you. Izuku looked at the dark green door right next to the teacher's lounge. Then he looked at the keycard lock on the door. The walls and door were apparently also made of the same quirk-proof material as the gate. Quirk-proof glass for the windows, an alarm system if any heat signatures enter without the door being unlocked first. All of this just for Izuku. He quickly swiped the keycard and opened the door to the room. It was clearly a child's room. There was apparently some construction on the room to implement the heat signatures, but it was very obviously a room for a child. As Izuku looked around the room, memories came back. White walls with splatters of colorful paint decorating it. Midoriya. Mike and Midnight both came in with Kaken trailing behind them, holding paint supplies. "Hey nerd, these two think your walls need redecorating," Kaken said as he placed the paint cans and brushes down. "It's stupid, but whatever." But my posters," Izuku argued, only for Midnight to interrupt. "We're not taking them down, Midoriya. We're just going to paint your walls," she said. "The white is so very boring." "What colors do you have?" Izuku put his book away and got up from his desk. He walked over to the cans. "The rainbow, but we can get more," Mike said. "What color do you?" Izuku's attention was drawn to the open cans, one orange and one purple, and the two missing paintbrushes. Kaken. Midnight. "Where are the dash?" Izuku turned and looked at Midnight and Kaken. The two were flicking paint at each other. Purple and orange splatter covered their clothes and parts of the walls. The two were yelling at each other. "Don't get it on the walls." "I don't care. You were the one that started it." "Bakugu. Namuri. You two are getting paint everywhere." "Be quiet, presentation microphone. That one was weak, brat." "Shut up." Izuku giggled at the antics and sneakily grabbed a paintbrush of his own. He carefully opened a green paint can and dipped his brush. He then flicked his wrist and green paint splattered all over the wall. "I think I found out what colors I want to paint my walls. Do you three want to help?" The three others turned to look at Izuku. After a second of silence, they all yelled, "Yes," and began flicking paint all over the walls. A small black bed with white pillows and a knitted blanket of assorted greens on top in the corner of the room. "Midoriya, what are you doing?" Izuku looked up to see Cementos. Izuku was currently sitting in a classroom, but he didn't think anyone had a class soon. But, then again, all the students would be coming in after lunch in an hour. Izuku then looked down at the jumble of yarn and needles, as well as the tutorial on his phone, and then back to the teacher, making a bee blanket? Cementos sighed and sat down with Izuku. "Do you need help?" Please." Izuku then turned to the wooden closet. He carefully opened it. "Wow, that's a lot of hero merch." Izuku's eyes then caught onto a small wooden box in the closet. He carefully grabbed it and sat down on the floor to open it. Inside was more hero merch, but from only one hero. There was a hat, an action figure, and a hoodie. All were Eraserhead themed. Izuku walked around the convention center, making sure to keep the out-of-costume ectoplasm in view. He was wearing the Eraserhead hoodie that Aizawa got him. Izuku looked around the booths as ectoplasm trailed behind him. Izuku loved going to these cons, but it was pretty ironic that a hero was at one of these hero-specific cons. Then, a specific booth caught Izuku's eye. It was a booth for underground hero merch, meaning that it was all original work. He hurriedly ran over to the booth. "Hi," he stuttered, realizing too late that he'd have to talk to the person behind the booth. "Oh," the woman said. "Hey there, little buddy. You want some merch for underground heroes, huh?" "Why? But, a specific hero." Izuku twiddled with the drawstrings of his hoodie. "An Eraserhead fanboy, huh? Well, I can't say I have much merch of him, but I do have a hat." The woman placed a hat on the table. It was a simple black snapback with off-white stripes, looking like the capture weapon on the bill. The closures on the back were golden. "So cool. How much?" "A show," Izuku said. "Why do you have a—" "One of the business course's second years has a quirk that molds plastic." Apparently, she was practicing making UA teachers as action figures. Mike found her. Izuku looked at the mini Eraserhead and then the actual Eraserhead. "It's very detailed. Looks just like you." Izuku grinned. "What are you going to do with it?" "I was planning on giving it to you, problem child." Mike saw her doing it and asked her to. "Make one of me." "I don't want it." Sure." I'll take it. Izuku closed the box and put it back in the closet. He walked over to the desk and looked at the hero posters on the wall. The heroes from numbers 1 to 13 all had their own posters. He ran his fingers over the desk and opened a drawer on the front. In the drawer, 13 books laid. Izuku took out the book closest to the front. Hero analysis for the present no. 13. Izuku hurriedly finished up the last page on hero analysis for the future no. 5. He was currently sitting in Recovery Girl's office. He had just broken his foot, and he was just one page away from finishing the book. Izuku placed a final PRD and went to his yellow backpack to grab another. Izuku uncapped his pen when Vlad King walked in. "Oh," the hero said. "Midoriya, is Recovery Girl in here?" "Yeah, I think so," Izuku responded. Izuku went back to writing the title. He was almost done when Vlad King spoke again. "Wouldn't it be, for the present, instead of, for the future? You're training to be a hero, aren't you?" Izuku looked up the man and then back to the notebook. Izuku then finished the title with tears in his eyes. "Why yeah, I guess you're right. For the present, huh?" Izuku muttered to himself, "Can I really still live up to that title?" Shota was so tired. Izuku was back, but he clearly wasn't the same. He was too sarcastic, too dark, too tired looking. And Shota's class wasn't helping his tiredness. He heard Ida yelling about being in their seats because homeroom was about to start. Shota stood outside the door as he waited for his class to calm down. "We're sitting. You're the only one up." Shota heard shuffling as Ida must have been getting in his seat. "I wonder who our sub is going to be. There's no way Sensei could come back to class so soon." "Hey, did anyone see that green-haired kid that was being loaded into the ambulance with Sensei? Who was he?" They saw Izuku. Shota opened the door with a foot. "Morning. You're back already, Sensei?" "What an undeniable pro," One yelled. These kids needed to shut up more often. Shota wobbled over to the podium as Ida yelled, "Glad to see you're doing well, Sensei." "Can you really call that doing well?" Uraraka muttered. Shota stood at the teacher's podium. "My welfare isn't important. Your fight is far from over." Shota heard Bakuga mutter, "Got that right," as Kaminari said, "More villains?" Shota is not overdramatic, even if Hizashi insists he is. UA's sports festival is approaching. "That's so totally normal." One yelled. "Fin. This is going to be a long day. Izuku really doesn't want to be in this conference room, but he needs to help these people." Netsu, Midnight, Snipe, Vlad King, and Detective Tsukachi were all in the room with him. He watched as Detective Tsukachi read through the papers in his hands. Izuku hadn't made his witness statement or given his notebook to the police, but he was told to attend the meeting and speak if he has any information to give. Izuku actually had the very notebook describing what he knew in his hands. He could tell that everyone in the room was trying to remain professional, but he could see the look in their eyes. He couldn't tell if it was pity or caring. But the air was thick with tension. The one called Shigaraki. Tsukachi read, "His quirk allows him to disintegrate anything he touches. We've been through the list of men in their 20s and 30s in the quirk registry with no luck. Nothing turned up on the villain name Kurojiri either. Neither is registered and both are using aliases. With their quirks not on record, they're part of the underworld." Snipe spoke up, "So you're saying we know next to nothing? I reckon we oughta learn fast or that leaders, Shigaraki, wounds'll heal and he'll be back again." Izuku opened his notebook as he spoke. "Shigaraki isn't the leader." Izuku felt every pair of eyes in the room turn to look at him. Shigaraki is a man-child. He wouldn't have been able to recruit as many villains as he did if he was the leader. He would talk to a sensei. This sensei figure seemed to really be behind the plan to kill All Might. Shigaraki would ask about progress on the Nomu or talk about how proud Sensei would be when All Might is dead. Izuku looked up from his notebook and placed it on the table. "You really should take this." Tsukachi blinked, then walked over to Izuku and carefully took the book. The detective flipped through the book. Izuku watched as the man's eyes widened as he got to a specific page. Counting in his head, Izuku realized that that page was the one where he first mentioned All for One. The detective closed the book, eyes still wide, and said, "Thank you, Midoriya. This is going to be such a great help." Why does the man look like he needs to talk to someone specific? Izuku really didn't want to put the UA uniform on. It was the basic male uniform, but Izuku had realized when putting it on that he hates uniforms now. Trying to put on the thing was something that Izuku was unwittingly avoiding. He felt suffocated in the tight button-up, and don't even get him started on the tie. He would love to tear the thing to shreds. So he decided to grab a white hoodie to replace the shirt. Then, he carefully took out the drawstring and replaced it with a red one from a different hoodie. He put that on, then took a look at the blazer. Instead of green shoulders with epaulets, there was just gray fabric. Well, this uniform was just so that he could blend into the crowds of students when moving around. Izuku put on the rest of his clothes and grabbed the old, faded yellow backpack. He walked out of his room when he was sure no one was passing by, hiding his zero as he exited. Lunch hadn't started yet, so Izuku took his time getting to 1A so that everyone would leave the hallway and he could talk to Kaken. Sho had said that Cementos would send Kaken to 1A to see Izuku. Izuku was nervous, to say the least. Finally seeing your best friend in a non-life-threatening situation after 5 years really does that. The bell rang and Izuku slumped in on himself to avoid attention. He eventually made it to the empty hallway with the classroom in it and opened the door. He saw the spiky hair and red eyes of Kaken, then fell into memories. Izuku took the letter on the floor in front of his door. He looked around to see who had knocked on his door, to see no one. He carefully opened the letter. "Hey, Izuku. I don't think I can really say this out loud yet, but I'm sorry. You didn't deserve what I put you through. I don't really know how to say this. I know that I did bad things. I know that how I act is wrong. I'm trying to get better. But I don't think I can really get better if I never told you that I was sorry. So, I'll just say that I want to try to be your friend again. I don't think I really deserve it as I am right now, but I want to. I'm asking you to give me a chance in the future. I'm sorry. Kaken." Kaken was here. Kaken was here standing in front of Izuku with his head lowered. The silence between them was broken when Kaken spoke. I know you said you want to try to be friends again, but I still have to say this to your face." Kaken looked up. "I'm sorry for everything I did to you, Izuku. I want to be friends again." Izuku felt himself start to cry as he ran forward and wrapped his arms around Kaken. "I want to be friends again too, Kaken." "Alright. That's it. What are you doing, nerd?" Kaken growled as Izuku banged his head against the table. "I've been trying to come up with a future hero name and I can't think of anything," Izuku muttered as he looked up from his notebook. "Help." Kaken walked over. "Well, you're planning on that whole number system thing, right? And you're planning to make yourself zero or whatever." "Yeah. Are you saying my name S should relate to zero? But W already decided that you'd be ground zero. I think zeros are going to be your thing for now on, Izuku." "Happy birthday, nerd," Kaken said as he passed Izuku a bagged gift. Izuku took out the tissue paper and looked inside. It was a bright yellow backpack. Izuku carefully took out the backpack and looked it over. It was pretty heavy. Was something inside? He opened the backpack and looked inside. Books on analysis, support gear, and heroes filled the bag. "Look at the zippers," Kaken said. Izuku did as Kaken said and looked. He grinned when he saw them. It was a subtle detail, but the pull tabs were black zeros. "Thank you, Kaken." Izuku was crying into his best friend's arms at 1 in the morning. He just wanted to visit his mom's grave with Sho and Kaken, but then villains spotted him. And Sho got hurt. "This is all me fault. This is all me fault. This is all me fault. This is all me fault dash." "Sho," Kaken ran his hand through Izuku's hair. "It's going to be okay, Izuku. None of this is your fault. What do you mean that you have to go to sleep? It's not that late, Izuku." Kaken yelled through the phone. Izuku liked Kaken, but the explosive boy could be such a brat. "I'm going to sleep, Kaken," Izuku answered. "Sho told me to go to sleep like an hour ago." "Stay up." "Guess. Begging? What happened to your pride, Kaken? I hear that you dash." Izuku hung up on his best friend. Cursing his mumbling habit, he looked at the clock. It was 11 p.m. Izuku curled into his blanket. He was really excited for tomorrow. Tears fell from Izuku's face as he ran to Kaken and hugged him as hard as he could, sobbing onto the blonde's shoulder. "I missed you too, Izuku," Kaken whispered, his voice quivering. "Please don't ever leave again." Izuku let out a watery laugh. "I don't plan on it, Kaken." For a second, the two stood there clutching onto each other. Then, Izuku wiped his eyes and let go. Kaken also was wiping his eyes. "The hobo teacher said that you've only been back for a day. How are you allowed outside of the teacher's watch?" "Well," Izuku said, noticing that Sho wasn't in the room with Kaken, "I think I'm not exactly out of their constant watch yet. I think they just want me to try to get more comfortable here. I haven't even properly talked to the police yet. I still barely remember this place." Kaken was silent for a second before talking quietly. "Amnesia? What do you remember about me? Do you remember that we're F or dash? I remember that we're friends, Kaken. I know that you've improved and that you helped me decide on." Izuku paused. If Kaken helped him decide on a hero name. Kaken believed he could be a hero. "That you thought I could be a hero?" Izuku gulped and looked at Kaken, an unsaid question in the air. "Do you still think that? What's with the past tense, nerd? You can still be a hero." Kaken would never say that if he didn't mean it. Izuku rushed out of 1A as the bell rang. He just had to stay and talk with Kaken for that long, huh? Couldn't just leave so that he wouldn't be spotted. He then noticed a break room and slipped in to try to wait out the moving of the students. He slowed down his breathing as a voice spoke up. What are you doing here, young Midoriya?" Izuku spun around to see a tall man with a cloth at his mouth. Was that blood on it? The man must be some sort of staff if he knew who Izuku was, but why did he seem so familiar? Izuku was also sure that he hadn't done an analysis on this man before. Have to wait out the students passing? Who are you? Izuku kept his hand on the door as he watched the man. Oh, Yagi Tashinori. That name too. Why was that name so familiar? Wait, number 170. Izuku took a closer look at the man and noticed some key features. The abnormally tall stature, the pale blonde hair, the shadows under blue eyes. This was All Might. Izuku steeled himself and let go of the door handle. I know that you're All Might, so you don't have to lie about that. Do you have a time limit or something? There's no way you can hold your other form for that long if you look like this out of it. The man seemed to untense and continued wiping his mouth. Yes, I have a time limit. It's barely an hour right now. Izuku spotted a coffee maker and got out the collapsible cup from his backpack. What are you going to do when it runs out? Izuku started making a cup of coffee. Guess this is the best time to test out some theories. Tell the press you're retiring before that happens, then go into hiding just as a teacher? Show your true form? Line up a successor? Izuku heard coughing at that one. So a successor it was then. Guess it was time to say the obvious. Izuku took a sip from his cup and looked back to the man. So how exactly are you planning on getting someone to become the next symbol of peace? Pretty big title to live up to, don't you think? Can't just be anyone. Especially not someone already a hero. Is that why you're here at UA? To find a successor in the future generation of heroes. Guess they did tell me you were perceptive. Izuku laughed at that. I'm analytical and insightful, not perceptive. I can't tell all of this immediately. I've been thinking about this for a while now. But it does help that you're pretty easy to read. Has Tsukachi talked to you yet? You were the only important teacher for the first-year hero course that wasn't present in the meeting, and he looked like he needed to speak to someone. Someone not in that room. Listening to hear if the bustle outside was gone, it was. Izuku finished his cup. He wiped the inside with a napkin, collapsed the cup, and threw away the napkin on his way out. It's pretty important that you call your friend All Might. Especially about this. Izuku then made his way through the empty hallways to his room. Izuku forcefully shut the door to his room and slumped onto the floor, the need to hide his zero falling with him. The familiar warmth spread through his body, helping his poor mood. Why the hell did he feel so drained from just talking to a few people? He took a deep breath and walked to his desk. He put his backpack on the desk and took out the laptop the staff gave him. Time to start his search about who the F all for one is. He scrolled through website after website talking about the urban legend. He decided to just click on the most information-packed one. The legend of All for One. There has been talk of a man who can steal away or give quirks for a while now. Apparently, around when quirks started popping up, a man's quirk could take and give quirks. The name of All for One stemmed from one man who could take all quirks. All stories of the man seem to be fiction. Here are just some of the things people claim about this legend. That he can steal or give any quirk possible. That he would take quirks from people who didn't want them and give them to the quirkless who wanted them. That he ruled Japan from the shadows. And that he has been alive since the vigilante era. This is only some of the things people claim about All for One. The legend of the man seems to be the result of people trying to scare others about losing quirks. Izuku stopped reading. Not exactly the desired amount of information, but it explained the detective's reaction when he read the name. Hold up. Didn't the doctor say Izuku rejected a quirk meant to be given to him? Izuku opened his drawers to find a piece of paper and quickly wrote down how his body rejected a quirk. What was so different about him that he couldn't receive a quirk? What was the difference between him and any other quirkless person that got one from All for One? Maybe he just had a quirk that made him reject quirks? Do other quirkless people have quirk factors and he just doesn't? Was it something to do with the ink in his zero? A bell ringing brought Izuku out of his frenzy and he looked at the clock. Geez, it was already after school? Well, Izuku still wanted to look around you. He packed up his backpack with everything he took out and then noticed the pull tabs on the faded bag. Black zeros. So this was the bag Kaken gave him? Guess he wasn't the only thing not as bright anymore. Izuku zipped the bag up and walked over to the door. He listened for walking, heard nothing and walked out. He spotted Sho walking into the teacher's lounge. Don't head near one problem child, Sho said as he closed the door, though I doubt you'll listen to me. So, Izuku did exactly what Sho told him not to do. He hid his zero and headed towards 1A. And then he got why Sho told him to stay away. A huge group of all classes stood in front of 1A, chatting on and on. He spotted a girl, the one he saw from the break-in, standing in the open doorway. What's going on? She said as she looked at the crowd, then back to the rest of the class. What are they here for? They're scoping out the competition, round face. Duh. There was Kaken with his smart but aggressive way of telling people things. We're the kids who survived a villain attack. Makes sense why they'd want to gawk at us before the sports festival. Kaken moved forward and addressed the crowd. No point, though. Move aside, cannon fodder. At least he wasn't saying extras anymore. Can we please not resort to calling people we don't know cannon fodder? Ida said. Izuku then noticed a familiar head of purple hair walk forward. Was that Shinso? Shinso sauntered up to the front of the crowd, who went silent. Gotta say, I'm a little disillusioned if this is all you have to offer. Those of us who didn't make it to the hero course are stuck in general education and the other courses. There's actually quite a few of us, you know. Depending on the results of the sports festival, they might consider transferring us to the hero course. I guess the reverse is also possible for you, huh? We're scoping out the competition? For a general education kid like me, this will be the perfect chance to knock you off your pedestals. Consider this a declaration of war. Hey, another person, hero course so 1B, heard you guys fought some villains, wanted to find out more. But all I'm seeing is this arrogant BSTRD. Izuku saw Shinso hurry away from the crowd. As Izuku followed, Kaken was shoving at the crowd to move. I don't give a CRP if I've got a mob of haters now. I'm heading for the top. Why should I care about you all? Guess his pride was still a thing, huh? Could never really get rid of that, I guess. But Izuku didn't really care. There was no way he would end up being allowed to participate in the sports festival 2 weeks from now. So, going to talk to Shinso, he was headed. The rest of the hallways were as quiet as they were supposed to be. But Izuku ran to catch up with Shinso. The other boy eventually stopped near one of the exits. Shinso didn't turn to look back. Could you stop following me? I can't deal with your sheet today, Kashiwa. Shinso looked back with a surprised expression, then went back to deadpan. Guess they got you back, huh? So Shinso did know some parts of Izuku's predicament. Yes, guess now I know that you know something at least. How much do you know though? This isn't really the best thing to talk about out in the open. Got a place you want me to tell you in? Well, it wasn't a no. Izuku looked around and spotted a close-by break room. Perfect. Come on, the break rooms are all soundproof, even if Netsu has cameras everywhere. Izuku walked towards the room. Shinso slowly followed. Izuku loudly opened the door and saw a woman, with poofed-up pale blue hair. Moonlit? Was that her name? Izuku felt Shinso stiffen at his side. Wasn't Moonlit one of the Gen Ed homeroom teachers? Noted. Izuku stared straight at the woman. I need to talk to someone in here. Mind leaving? Moonlit seemed like she wanted to protest, but Izuku just glanced at the camera in the room and she huffed past him. He glanced at Shinso to see the boy looking away from the teacher with a tightened jaw. Was he biting something? His tongue? Izuku shut the door and got out a thermos and 2 collapsible cups from his bag. Trust him when he says that he keeps a ton of necessary stuff in his backpack. She doesn't seem to like me. Or you for that matter. What was up with that? Shinso seemed to glance at the thermos as Izuku poured himself a cup of coffee. You're quirkless and I've got myself a villainous quirk. Seems like a classic quirkus teacher to me. Izuku stopped pouring himself coffee, downed his cup, then poured one for both him and Shinso. What a beach. Shinso stifled a laugh then continued talking as he grabbed a cup. You wanted to know what I know about you? Please tell me. I'm guessing Sho told you quite a lot if you were able to know that me being here was a big deal. Shinso sipped his coffee then spoke. Eraserhead said that you became a ward after a villain attack by dragon. That you met Netsu and he decided to make you a ward. He told me about how you were at risk of getting kidnapped and why you were at risk. That you decided to make a system to number every member of the UA staff so that they could keep track of you. Izuku felt himself relax and show his 0. He said that the staff all have numbers somewhere on their bodies. That they don't know what's in the ink you made or how exactly it works. That you can pinch your 0 to tell the numbers a message determined by the staff beforehand. How whenever you and a number make eye contact, the numbers burn. And that was about it. Izuku sipped his own cup as he leaned back, thinking. He then decided to speak again. I feel like I owe you a thank you. Shinso blinked, confused apparently. Huh? Izuku set down his cup. You helped me get home. I don't think things would have gone as smoothly as they did if you didn't help me. You could have written me off as a crazy kid. You could have ignored my message. But you didn't, and I'm here to tell you this. Thank you so much. I don't get why people would call you a villain because of your quirk. You're a hero, Shinso. And I'm going to help you become one. Midoriya, what are you talking about? Guess it was now or never, huh? You can be a hero. There are 2 places in 1A that a Gen Ed kid could fill. One of those spots is going to be taken by you. And I'll be helping you train to get there. It'll be my thank you. Shinso sat there, looking stunned. Wait, was Izuku the first person to tell him he could be a hero? He must be. I don't think you wouldn't be able to make it on your own. But you could definitely place in the sports festival if you trained a bit more. Placing would guarantee you a spot in 1A. I can help you prove that a person who has been called a villain all their life can be a hero. That anyone can be a hero even if they face ridicule because of their quirk. You can inspire so many others to become great heroes. So, please Shinso, allow me to help you as you did me. Let me help you become a hero. Izuku blinked as he realized that a ton of emotion was pushed into those last sentences. Where did that come from? He felt such a longing to make Shinso a hero. Was this how Sho felt when he saw potential in him? He made eye contact with Shinso as he waited for a reply. This felt so much like when he asked to become Sho's student. But this was reversed. Shinso breathed deeply as he stared back at him. The quirkless kid teaching the kid that brainwashes people with his voice how to be a hero? That's a pretty big to society, don't you think? A grin spread across Shinso's face. It looked kinda like Sho's. That sounds good to me. But only on one specific condition. Izuku straightened up. Since when was he on the edge of his seat? He couldn't get distracted now. No, he couldn't pass up the potential Shinso had. Tell me what it is. I swear I'll try to meet it if you could let me help guarantee a spot in the hero course for you. You said there are 2 placed is 1A? That you're going to help me take one of those spots? You say that I can prove I can be a hero. that I can inspire others to follow in my footsteps. But do you practice what you preach, Midoriya? Do you think you can prove to them quirkless people can be heroes? Do you think that you can prove that anyone can be a hero even with a bad background? Can you also inspire others to become great heroes? Because I think you can. I believe that you can be just as much a hero as I can be. So, my condition is that that other place is going to be filled by you. I bet that you would be given a spot in the hero course if you wanted. So, the fact you don't have an epaulette yet says something. We're going to be heroes together. We'll prove society wrong together. A quirkless kid and a villainous kid being heroes together. What do you say? Izuku hesitated for a moment, then opened up his backpack. He brought out what he was looking for and placed it on the table. A notebook and 2 black pens. I have a series of 13 analysis notebooks I made to help me become a hero. Izuku uncapped the pens and walked around to Shinsu's side of the table. I labeled them Quirk Analysis for the Future. Then I changed it to Quirk Analysis for the Present. Do you want to change it together? Izuku held out a pen to Shinso. For our present? Shinso took the pen and started writing the title, For Our Present. Izuku finished writing the title with his own pen and smiled at the bold words. Guess that's you saying yes? Quirk Analysis for Our Present number 14. Of course it's a yes. Heisho. How do I apply my analysis to other people? Izuku walked into the empty 1A the morning after finishing his notebook title, holding said notebook. Sho took one look at the notebook in Izuku's arms and sighed. Which kid did you band together with to help make a hero? Shinso Hitoshi. I know you know him. Help. Sho groaned as he took out a pen. Give me your notebook, kid. I'll help you out. Being called to the principal's office when he lives at school was an interesting experience. Of course, he was in his room and so only he could hear the announcement. Oh, and the teachers in the teacher's lounge. Them too. Izuku. What's happening that Nedzu is calling you? Mike asked as Izuku made his way out of his room. I have no clue, Izuku responded, then it dawned on him. All Might and the detective, never mind, yes I do. Huh, Mike said. Well, by the way, the staff decided to give this to you. He took out a phone? He held it out to Izuku. Izuku hesitantly took it. He looked it over. Thank you, but why? Mike beamed. You're a kid, Izuku. You need something to talk to your friends on. Maybe you can get Bakugo and Shinsu's number tomorrow. Izuku chuckled and put the phone in a small pocket of his backpack. Sho doesn't seem that good at keeping things to himself. Mike ruffled Izuku's hair as he walked past. Only about you, little listener. Izuku took out the building plan he was given and looked it over. Geez, why was the route to the principal's office so complicated? He slowly made his way to the office. How were students meant to make it to the office when the school was so confusing? He looked around at the empty hallways of UA. It must be the later times of 3rd PRD, meaning passing time between 4th would happen soon. Izuku refused to get caught up in passing time again. So, he sped up his pace to the office until he made it to the door. He knocked. The door opened, revealing a grinning Nedzu. Izuku, can I call you Izuku? Izuku nodded as he walked in and Nedzu continued speaking. I hope the walk here wasn't confusing for you? Not at all. Izuku noticed that Detective Tsukachi and a deflated All Might were in the office. I'm guessing that this is about the notebook I gave the detective yesterday? Yes, Tsukachi said, but we also would need you to fill in any blanks with an interview. If you are comfortable with it, that is. Izuku took a seat in one of the chairs in front of Nedzu's desk. I think I can make it through. It was just a report. Just a report. He didn't even need to say it all. But something was now bothering him. Why is All Might here? Tsukachi and All Might shared a look before the detective spoke again. Well, there was a concerning part of your notebook that involves him. You heard of All for one while with the League of Villains, right? Izuku shuffled in his seat. Straight to the point apparently, yes. I do believe he's a kind of urban legend. A man who can take and give quirks if I'm right? What does this have to do with you, All Might? The man in question cleared his throat. My quirk dash, oh sheet. All Might's quirk was passed down to me. It's a stockpiling quirk, where the power from the previous users are cultivated and given to the next. It cannot be forcibly taken, but it can be forcibly given. It's called One for All, and it was originally derived from the quirk All for One. Izuku sat silent as All Might continued. All for One and the first One for All user were brothers. The younger was believed to be quirkless. All for One forcefully gave him a stockpiling quirk, but the younger brother had the quirk to pass on his quirk to others. The two quirks fused and became All for One. He could steal any quirk, so he got himself a quirk to stop the aging process. And it was me that brought him down. At least, that's what we thought. He survived. And now he's the brains behind the League of Villains. Izuku took a moment, then shrugged off his backpack and zipped it open. He took out the page he had written about not being able to be given a quirk. In my notebook, I talked about a doctor who worked on the Nomu. That wasn't all I found out during my interaction with him. Izuku held out the paper and watched as the men's eyes went wide at the writing. He also said that they weren't able to force a quirk on me. Toshinori left Nedzu's office with Naomasa a few minutes before young Midoriya, utterly stunned. Just listening to the boy talk about his experiences was so jarring. He had heard stories of the boy from his coworkers, and he suddenly got why some were worried about talking to him. They had talked about a happy and bright kid with waves of potential. They said how he always smiled and laughed, how he was very empathic for a kid, his determination and drive. But he doubted that the child he had just spoken to was what the other staff remembered. But he understood when Aizawa would argue that he was the same kid, just that what they were used to was buried deep. That all of the smiles and empathy was just hidden away. And Toshinori got where the man was coming from. The way the boy would get light in his eyes when he talked about saving Bakugo. Or the way he rubbed his neck fondly when talking about memories of UA or about discovering the truth about the Zero. Student Zero was an interesting person, to say the least. Izuku watched as the men left the office, leaving him with Nedzu. Izuku, the animal said, a soft tone in his voice, I do hope you understand when I tell you that you can tell whoever you want about your situation. You are smart enough to understand who needs to be told what. Another thing, I feel like I owe you an apology. What? I have failed you as both a teacher and a guardian. If you ever feel unsafe here, I will personally find you a place to be safe. Izuku walked into the office of Principal Nedzu and sat down. Midoriya, the principal said, there is something that I must say. You are currently under UA's protection, but you don't have to be. If you ever feel unsafe here, I will personally find you a place to be safe. Izuku shuffled in his seat. Okay, sir. Izuku sat tall in his seat. Sir, I doubt I will ever need to take you up on that offer. But, thank you. Anything for UA's ward. Izuku ran to the 1C prep room with a heavy backpack and the UA gym uniform on. He sent a text to Shinso saying that he was coming to wish him good luck. He knocked on the prep room and Shinso opened the door, then immediately closed it behind him to stop the rest of his class from seeing Izuku. Midoriya, Shinso said and then sighed, since when were you allowed out? I thought you weren't allowed to walk around campus, especially during the sports festival. Izuku took off his backpack and unzipped it. Well, I couldn't just not give you your support gear in person. Especially after I worked so hard on it. He pulled out the artificial vocal cords. It's a support mask that makes Shinso able to mimic other people's voices. Izuku had planned it out with Shinso but planned for it to be a surprise. It wasn't supposed to be done yet. Shinso gingerly grabbed the mask and looked it over. I thought it wasn't supposed to be done for another week. Don't I have to register it or something? I took the liberty of registering it for you. Well, you don't have to use it though. It works the same as we planned, so you'll be able to use it. Shinso put the mask on and turned some of the knobs. My name is Kashiwa Itoku and I'm a little beach. Izuku grinned as the mask filtered Shinso's voice to sound exactly like Kashiwa's. Guess it works then, huh? Shinso took off the mask and held it in one hand. I wouldn't be able to lift this without your training. Thanks, Midoriya. It's no problem, Shinso. You're going to be a hero. We're going to be heroes. Right? We're going to be heroes. Now, get going. I better see you on the podium. Shinso opened the door to the prep room and out on the mask. Izuku's voice came from Shinsu's support item. I better see you in 1A. The door to the prep room closed and Izuku then ran to the 1A prep room. He texted Kaken that he was coming. Kaken decided to call him. Izuku hesitantly picked up. Kaken, I just said that I'm coming, why are you calling me? Izuku heard yelling from the other side. I don't care, half and half. Don't pick fights you can't win. Izuku found his way to the 1A prep room and suddenly didn't want to be there. But he knocked anyway and hung up the phone with I'm here, shut up. Kaken opened the door, looking said, Izuku, didn't know you were allowed out of the room. Yeah, well I am. Good luck, Kaken, Izuku said, not like you'll need it though. Kaken smirked, DMN straight. I'm going to be number 1. Better have a good speech prepared. Whatever, nerd. Don't stop watching me. Izuku waited for the door to shut. As he left, he heard the people inside going apeshit about Kaken being nice. Geez, show really does have a chaotic class. Izuku was now back in his room, watching the sports festival from his computer. Something that was pretty annoying because he lived in UA. He watched as Mike announced, it's the UA Sports Festival. Well, at least he could still cheer on his friends from here. I better see you in 1A, Hitoshi yelled in Midoriya's voice as he walked back into the prep room. He grinned as he put the mask down to his neck. Midoriya really outdid himself. He heard a scoff from his left and felt the glare of one of his classmates. His grin dropped as he looked to see Sunada K was the one glaring. Tsunada's pitch-black eyes caught his and Hitoshi suddenly got an idea. Hitoshi's grin came back on his face as he put the mask back on. He twisted the knobs on the side, feeling the collective stares of his entire class. He then looked back to Tsunada and spoke. Is there a problem, Tsunada? Hitoshi heard the boy SCK in his breath as his own voice came out of the mask. What the F? He heard another familiar voice, Yasumi Maru hiss. Hitoshi turned to see the girl in question. Who the hell allowed you to have a support item? Hitoshi shuffled the mask down to his neck before he spoke. My friend made it for me. He trained me and said that he'd get me to one of the open spots in 1A. This mask is part of his plan to help me become a hero. It's specially made so that I could make better use of my quirk. Kinda nice to be able to trick people into answering me. Also, anyone is allowed to have a support item as long as it's handmade by a student of their grade and they aren't a hero student. Thank you for that fact, Midoriya. It's the UA Sports Festival. The one time each year where our fledgling heroes compete in a ruthless grand battle. Hitoshi was slightly aware of present Mike announcing the entrance of 1A. He heard Hirose Aina, a girl with silver hair that could spit acid, muttering, "Attention hogs." Hitoshi grimaced at that. He declared war on 1A, but he could tell that the attention wouldn't be something to be proud of. They were attacked by villains, Hirose. It's not like they purposefully got the attention. Not that Hitoshi was complaining that much. If they weren't attacked, then he wouldn't have a friend. He then heard Urata Iona and Nadachi Kiro speaking. We're just here to make the others look good, Nadachi said as he glared at 1A. Yeah. It's kinda hard to get motivated, Urata responded as she did the same. Hitoshi could get behind that statement. He looked back up to see Midnight flick her WHP. Should she really be a high school teacher? And reffing first years? And now for the athlete's oath. She said, your student representative is? Bakugu Katsuki from class 1A. Mutters of disbelief spread across the 1A class as Bakugu walked up to the mic. Hitoshi knew of Bakugu before he met Midoriya, but meeting Midoriya had kinda changed Hitoshi's view of him. The way that Midoriya would talk about the blonde so fondly really brought home the change. He was prideful but not too arrogant. He was aggressive but not directly harmful. It was intriguing how an entire person can change by hearing their best friend talk the world about them. Oh, we're so screwed, a 1A student with large elbows said. To one with spiked red hair, Bakugu is going to paint an even bigger target on his back. He'll take us down with him too. The redhead shook his head and sighed. He got like 135 points on the entrance exam. First place. Kinda makes sense. Hitoshi heard Urata mutter, yeah, on the hero exam. But, the redhead continued, he's been tamer since that green-haired kid came by. Actually, he looked familiar dash. Another boy with bright yellow hair sporting black lightning bolt butted in. And did you hear what the dude called him? Kakin. Like, who the hell was that? So, Midoriya didn't just wish Hitoshi luck then. He must have stopped by the 1A prep room and Bakugo must have been less careful. Hitoshi watched as Bakugo spoke. The athlete's oath, the blonde said, make no mistake about it when I say that I'm going to take first place. There was great uproar from the crowds. Bakugo started talking again. I'm not done. The crowd settled down and Bakugo continued. I'm going to get first because I'll work harder than anyone else here. It doesn't matter what quirks anyone else has, I'm going to work to get ahead of them. And no one here can stop me without working for it. Then he walked off the stage. The crowds of students went into another uproar. But Hitoshi noticed that 1A wasn't yelling. The hero class just stood there in shock. Hitoshi only needs to place to get into the hero course. He doesn't need to get first. Now, Midnight drew the attention back to herself. Without any delay, let's get to the first event. A screen turned on behind the teacher, displaying obstacle course in bold letters. The fateful first event this year is an obstacle course race. Giant doors opened as Midnight explained. It's a race between every member of all 11 classes. The course is a 4-kilometer lap around the stadium. Hitoshi put his mask over his mouth and turned some of the knobs. Our school preaches freedom in all things. As long as you don't go off the course, it's fair game. Racers, to your positions. Hitoshi grinned under his mask as he took a deep breath. He stared at Midnight to see when she was calling. This is going to be the easiest control of his life. Start. Start. Hitoshi mimicked Midnight's voice and heard the cheers from the students. He activated his quirk on anyone he could and watched as a good majority of the crowd seized up, their eyes going blank as he took control. He could feel the headache forming, so he quickly fought his way to the front. He felt some of the controlled being jostled or hit, making him lose control. He ran forward and realized that the gate was too narrow, a filter of sorts. Good thing that only a few people were actually going through, but there was still a significant crowd. He recognized the boy that led the pack, freezing the students behind him as Todoroki. Hitoshi quickly jumped to avoid the ice. I ain't letting you get ahead that easy, half a half. Hitoshi looked up to see Bakugo, the red 1A student, and 2 other 1A students jumping above the crowd. His eyes caught onto a girl that had a pole coming out of her hand. He went to grab it, but then a shock of pain spread through his head. He quickly released his control and looked back to see the surge of new participants running to the gate. Hitoshi quickly recovered and pulled on the pole, causing the girl to fall. He winced, but she landed on her feet and kept running. Hitoshi did the same. He then saw a familiar sight. Robots. The robot villains from the entrance exam. Hitoshi heard the voice of Present Mike coming from the speakers. Every obstacle course needs obstacles. The first barrier, Robot Inferno. Hitoshi looked up and stopped running. High above the students were more robots. The 0-pointers. Todoroki laid a hand on the ground and froze the robots, leaving a gap for him to run through. But those robots were unstable. 2 students tried to run into the gap, but then the robots collapsed. Present Mix's voice came out of the speakers again. 1, as Todoroki is busting through and sabotaging the other in one move. That's cold. He's already way ahead of the pack, almost feels unfair. Hitoshi looked around to try to find a way past, but he couldn't. He watched as the red-haired kid, Kirishima, and another hero course student called Tetsu busted out of the robot pile. Explosions made Hitoshi look up to see Bakugo and 2 other 1A kids going over the robots. The current leaders are overwhelmingly from 1A. Mind telling us why, Mummy Man? Present Mike said. The voice of Eraserhead came from the speakers as Hitoshi found a metal panel from a robot. Class A knows there's no time to hesitate. They felt the fear of a villain attack up close. They've endured it and grown from that experience. They've forgotten how to hesitate. Hitoshi laughed when he heard Eraserhead talk about his class like that. Midoriya would always say that Sho was soft on his class this year, and now Hitoshi knew what he meant by that. Eraserhead must be proud of his class. Hitoshi couldn't wait to be a part of that. He grabbed the metal panel, Why the hell is this so heavy? And noticed that he was being followed by a robot. He jumped and knocked the robot away. Oh, he was going to be thanking Midoriya for ages after this. Hitoshi wouldn't have even been able to lift the panel if it wasn't for the training Midoriya had him do. A cannon shot made Hitoshi see a zero-pointer falling to the ground and clearing a path. He quickly ran through the gap. He kept running until he made his way to an area consisting of a pit, some bits of land, and ropes connecting the land. He groaned as he realized what this was. Present Mic's voice came over the speakers again. So the first barrier was a piece of cake. How about the second? Fall and you're out. Crawl across to make it. It's the fall. Hitoshi walked up to a rope when his eyes caught onto a girl with shoulder-length pink hair and support equipment on her body. She giggled before she spoke. My turn to make a splash. It's time for my support items to get the spotlight. Take a look, all you support companies, at the wire arrow and hover saws. This is the greatest chance to show off to the support industry. The girl grinned manically as a rope deployed and hooked onto one of the islands. So those support companies should check out all my adorable babies. She landed on the island, her saws making her hover in the air. Cool, Hitoshi said as he balanced the panel on a rope. The rope was sloping down, meaning that he could ride it down. He stood on the sides of the panel, crouched down. He pushed off the starting platform and slid down the rope, making sure to keep his balance. Another thing to thank Midoriya for. Hitoshi eventually made it to a spot of land with a sign saying, Danger. Mines. Well, that's a minefield. And Present Mic proceeded to confirm his suspicions. A good deal of the students have reached the final barrier. A minefield. A quick glance can reveal the locations, so keep your eyes peeled. I should say that our mines aren't deadly, they just pack a punch. Hitoshi was struck with an idea when he saw Bakugo use his explosions to propel himself to first place. This is crazy. I'm crazy, he thought as he started his plan. The mines exploded on touch. It would be better to slow down and avoid them, but Hitoshi's plan was insane. So insane that it might just work. He took the metal panel and began digging up the mines, earning weird looks from the students. Passing him. He eventually had a decent pile of mines and took a deep breath. He clutched the metal close to his chest and jumped onto the pile of mines. Hitoshi screamed as he flew through the air, the explosion propelling him forward. He flew over the heads of the leads, then began crashing. An explosion from behind? Present Mic commentated. An accident, or was it intentional? Class 1 sees Shinso rides the wave, passing both Todoroki and Bakugo. Get the hell back here. Hitoshi looked back to see the two hero students still pursuing him. Todoroki slammed his foot on the floor and made an ice path to help him run. Our former leaders have now called a ceasefire to chase down Shinso. Present Mic announced. Hitoshi turned the knobs of his mask as he grabbed the wires on the metal with his hands. Passing the two hero students was impossible, so he needed to stay in the lead. He slammed down the panel, exploding more mines underneath. Then he screams. But the sound that came out of his mask wasn't a normal scream. Instead, an ear-splitting shrill made the two boys pursuing Hitoshi cover their ears. The explosion underneath Hitoshi pushed him to the other side of the arena, leaving just a mad dash for the finish. Hitoshi ran as fast as he could to the exit as the cheers of the audience members and Present Mic became perceivable. Well, who would have guessed such an incredible turn of events? The hero announced. The first to make it back is Shinso Hitoshi from Class 1C. Hitoshi crossed the finish line. Izuku sat staring at his computer screen. Shinso really just won the obstacle course. Not to mention that Shinso's plan was so smart. He did exactly what Izuku had taught him. Izuku let a wide smile spread across his face. A smile that was just as bright as it was 5 years ago. Hitoshi is utterly screwed. A cavalry battle. Team events were never something he usually did well in with his quirk, and the 10 million bounty won't help him get teammates. Hitoshi heard a voice and turned around to see the support girl from before. First place, you really stand out. Team up with me, Mr. First Place. The girl lifted up her goggles to show yellow eyes with crosshairs as pupils. I'm Hatsum Mei from the support course. No one's teamed up with you yet, and I can be useful for you. I see you have a baby of your own, but I have more. I'll be in the spotlight and you can have some of my babies. Wow, does she not know about context? Well, everyone's going into groups of their own classes, so no one else is going to team up with him. Sure. Shinso Hitoshi from General Education. Okay, one person is better than no one. What do you have? Hatsume's grin widened as she threw support items into the air. I have so many. We have this one, based off a hero's jetpack with a few additions of my own. Then I have the hover saws that allow me to hover. I also have my wire arrow that works like a grappling hook. And my hydraulic bracers that can push out poles to trip up opponents. That's not all though. My quirk is called Zoom. It lets my vision zoom in. If I really focus, I can see up to 5 kilometers. Hitoshi took the mask off and held it in his hands. Artificial vocal cords. Lets me imitate voices. My quirk dash. Was it really a good idea to tell this girl? Hitoshi would ruin this one chance at getting teammates. Shinso, you can't just not tell teammates about your quirk, Midoriya said in a flat tone as he wrote in his notebook. You have to win. Teamwork, as much as you hate it, helps people win. Why did Midoriya have to be so right all the time? Hitoshi continued speaking, lets me brainwash people who answer me. Hatsume grabbed at Hitoshi's mask and started looking it over. This is really well made. There's no way you made this yourself, right? You'd be put right into support if you did. Who's your designer? She didn't even hesitate. God, why did Midoriya have to be so right all the time? Hitoshi slowly took back the mask and put it on. My friend is pretty good at making support items. He did make an extremely complicated communication system small enough to fit in ink, after all. I'll find that designer of yours. Hatsume's grin widened even more. Now, who's going to be our other teammates? I don't think we're getting any more teammates. Hatsume put the 10 million and 10-point headband on and Hitoshi held her up. Start. Present Mick's voice rang out of the stadium as the teams rushed to get the headband on Hatsume's head. Running is always the best plan when you're outnumbered. So that's exactly what Hatsume and Hitoshi did. But instead of running, Hatsume just grabbed Hitoshi's uniform collar and used her jetpack to allow them to fly for a couple of seconds. Hatsume, your inventions are amazing, Hitoshi said as they were mid-air, falling. He quickly corrected his footing to make the hover shoes work and they didn't crash. I see you like my babies. They're so cute. Present Mick's voice came over the stadium again. Well, barely 2 minutes have passed, but the battlefield is already chaotic. With everyone scrambling for headbands, it's not just the 10 million out there. Those other high rankers are worth a shot as well. Hitoshi heard a shout of swears and looked up to see Bakugo above them. Well, time to PSS off the strongest person here. Hatsume, give him the headband, Hitoshi said, but give it to him like you don't care about it. Shinso, are you crazy? Hatsume said, but still taking off the headband. Here you go, Blasty. We'll get it back later. Hatsume put the headband in Bakugo's open hand and the boy was brought back to his team. The pair looked back at the team to see a very sad-off Bakugo. Izuku has now realized he may have made a big oversight when teaching Shinso. A person's will to live. Izuku may have taught him to find someone's weakness and exploit it, but pissing off someone like Kaken may have been a very bad move. At least Shinso was going to get Kaken to talk? Izuku watched as Shinso and the support girl Hatsume ran around the arena, getting some different headbands as well as losing some. Then the time was almost out. Izuku watched as Shinso told Hatsume something and then ran close to Kaken. Shinso said something and Kaken responded, screaming. Then Kaken went still as the countdown started. Shinso and Hatsume were soon airborne. Hatsume then grabbed one of the headbands around Kaken's neck as the countdown ended. Midnight's voice rang out in Izuku's room. Time's up. Let's see who the top 4 teams are. In first place, with a final second turnaround, Team Hatsume. Izuku slammed open his door and ran to the teacher's lounge. He needed to congratulate Shinso.